Well, good evening all. Welcome to the January 25th meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Board. It's 7 o'clock. And
You have an echo.
yeah, I do have an echo.
Get rid of the echo.
Try to talk.
I think it's through the room back there. All right, have I got, yeah, that's a little bit better. Thank you.
Can you guys hear him? Okay.
Can you all hear me? Good. And the audio engineer here has
Still
got,
too loud.
got it under control.
Just turn the knob.
Let me back off a bit. That
Yeah.
may help. Okay. Well, as I said, welcome to the Chelmsford Planning Board. We are in person, of course. We're also on Zoom, both for public input and comment, and we have two board members who have Zoomed in. We will go to Zoom as we can. There's always the possibility that the internet goes sideways. We won't stop the meeting because of that, but I certainly hope that doesn't happen. First up is public comment. Let me mention, of course, the public comment should be on things that are not on the open and on the agenda. But if there are any other topics people would like to discuss, please go ahead. Anybody? I see nobody. Is there anybody on Zoom?
Doesn't.
Okay, very good. That's it for public input tonight. First up, some consideration of a proposed zoning change. This has been sent to us by the ZBA. Is there anybody here from the ZBA? We had invited them. Yeah? We have a ZBA person in the back. Oh, hi. Hi, Aaron. I was wondering if, might you be able to give us some insight on what the ZBA is asking here? It looks like a fairly minor change to give them a little bit of leeway on some of the front, side, and rear lot dimensions.
I don't think she's prepared for that.
All right. Yeah, just give us a quick rundown of it.
To be completely honest, I didn't know that you were going to ask for.
I'm sorry about that.
I'm not really prepared to speak on it. But yeah, it's basically some clarification of this section. I think a few years ago, I think it was 3 years ago maybe,
Yeah.
they made some changes to this section to make it easier for the building inspector to go ahead
Yeah.
and approve some things without having to come in front of the ZBA.
Right.
And this is basically further clarification on that.
Okay, good. It looks
Again,
like
I don't really want to speak too much to it.
Well, that's fine. It looks like it adds some leeway. Evan, do you
Yeah.
have any comments on this?
No, this was presented to you informally at your
Yeah, the
meeting
last
with-
one.
last month. Tonight opens the required zoning public hearing, starts the process to
Yeah.
get the town meeting. The planning board is required to make a recommendation at town meeting. Procedurally, the hearing is open this evening.
Yeah.
We have time to continue it into February.
Okay.
The purpose is primarily to obtain public comment from
Okay.
interested parties. At a high level, and I'll just go spend a couple
Yeah.
minutes on them. These two proposed zoning amendments are germinating from the ZBA process itself. The first one, which is up on the screen, proposes to reinsert provision number 2, which was inadvertently deleted in 2019 when town meeting approved the sliding scale, which you see on the map here. Section 2 is important to reinsert because it provides clarity to those who do not qualify for the by right provision, single and two-family.
Right.
And Section 2 specifically indicates per state zoning law that they are entitled to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit.
Right.
So because this was inadvertently deleted, it has created some confusion. So the desire at this point, while we have it fresh in our minds, is to ask town meeting to specifically reinsert this language, which brings us back to 2019.
Understood, understood. Okay, well, our duty here is to have a public hearing. Is there anybody here who would wish to comment on this proposal from the ZBA? I don't see anybody. Is there anybody in Zoom land?
No one specifically for this topic, although Paul Haverty, you have something to say?
Okay, go ahead,
Yeah,
Paul.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Paul Haverty, Town Council. I did speak with ZBA Chairman Brian Reedy earlier today. He is going to try to get here, but he said he wasn't sure if he was going to make it before you guys completed this topic. His indication was that the Zoning Board of Appeals was particularly concerned with the lot coverage requirement and the floor area ratio requirements, and essentially the relief that could be granted to certain lots with pre-existing 1 and 2 family structures was very limited because they wouldn't be able to comply with certain floor area ratio and lot coverage requirements if they were to expand. So that was the reason that he was seeking some sort of addition to the zoning bylaws to address that issue.
Yeah, so that's the second article,
Yep.
which is up on the screen. This article proposes to amend section 195-9B. 195-9 speaks to conformity required. So as you are aware, there's currently a provision in section B that allows the Zoning Board of Appeals to grant a special permit to reduce front, side, and rear setbacks.
Right.
This is only for single and two families.
Right.
Anywhere in town. So what the zoning board is interested in doing here is also expanding
The FAR.
that 20% to the historical table that's in the previous article.
Okay.
And then the third item, which is what town council's speaking to, which is really come into sight for the zoning board fairly recently, is to allow the zoning board the ability to work with property owners to have flexibility on the existing floor area ratio provision that applies
Yeah.
to single family and two family, as well as the building coverage. And rather than have a sliding scale or a specific threshold, the zoning board is interested in providing flexibility via a special permit on a case-by-case basis. That's primarily due to the diversity of pre-existing non-conforming lot sizes. As the board knows, 80% of the lots in town are non-conforming as far as size. We have lots that are 10,000 square feet, 7,500 square feet, lots that should be 40,000 that are 20,000. And as I explained to the board at your previous meeting, the best way to view these two articles, or particularly the second article, is within the light of pre-COVID, you had young families, first-time home buyers, moving to Chelmsford, and like many first-time home buyers, they have an expanding family, and they want to put additions on. Those additions were typically expanding a kitchen, putting on a new bedroom. Increasingly, the board was seeing requests for garages. Many houses in Chelmsford do not have garages, as well as sheds, enclosed decks, three-season porches, things of that nature. During COVID, and particularly coming out of COVID, that has been accelerated, primarily due to the trend where people are increasingly working from home, so they want a dedicated in-home office.
Right.
So the floor area ratio and the building coverage, currently if you do not comply, you need a variance from the zoning board.
Right.
And as many know, the zoning board has very strict legal requirements in order to grant a variance. Those are fairly
Unique
difficult to
hardship,
obtain,
basically.
particularly related to FAR and building coverage. So this is why the zoning board is looking for some zoning mechanism where the town doesn't have to say no. You can go to the zoning board, a group of your peers, make your case, abutters within 300 feet would be notified, and at least there'd be a public process whereby an appointed board would be able to engage with the constituents.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you for framing that. We have obviously opened for public comment. There's nobody here commenting tonight, but I think we should probably continue this matter and maybe get somebody from the ZBA in, but, you know, on the surface, it seems pretty reasonable.
I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Since we have Paul
But
here.
there may not be anybody here to
Paul's
answer
also
them.
trying to talk.
Okay. So this is a question for either Evan or Paul. So if I have a house and then I happen to purchase 2 other lots with no homes on it, but they're small little pieces and that now makes up my entire property, what does this do? Like, and they originally at some time had a home on them. Would this allow me at all to build on those properties? Or is that still not allowed? Like, how would that affect it? And assuming that the whole property is like, I can't split it because it doesn't have the acreage to it.
Right, so there is a concept under the zoning laws that is the doctrine of merger. So if you have lots that are held in common ownership and one or both lots do not meet zoning requirements, then the lots actually merge for zoning purposes so that they can either create a conforming lot or reduce the nonconformity of the lots. If you have lots that previously had structures and were previously separate lots, then they may still be able to reconstruct a demolished structure depending on how recently in time, that structure was demolished. Once a pre-existing non-conforming structure has been demolished and has not been replaced within 2 years, then the non-conforming benefits are lost. But if it's within that 2-year period, there may be an ability to reconstruct.
Okay, now say I'm in RC. Under this zoning, especially with the square footage, can I build, RC is 2 families, right? Mm-hmm. Can I add a garage in the middle and build another house? Like, you know how they make it 2 families?
So,
Because it's
so this applies to pre-existing non-conforming single and 2 families. I would think, I'd have to look at this a little more closely, but I think that if you have an existing single family on a lot that is otherwise compliant, you certainly could turn that into a 2-story. If the lot is non-conforming, but the use would still be allowed, you are likely allowed to add on a second unit.
like with the garage, like they do the garage in the middle, and then all of a sudden you have the 2 families.
Yeah, so.
And like, that's kind of what I'm concerned
the
about.
current zoning bylaw and what's proposed doesn't specifically address your aesthetic or architectural layout concern.
Yes,
Now,
but-
can the zoning board attempt to delve into that design, the layout? They can.
It's not a layout per se. What I'm concerned about is by increasing the allowable square footage on, like, you have a case here, which is, the classic
I know,
case,
yeah.
right? Someone wants to add an in-law apartment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's wrong with it. Totally get it. I'm with you. I'm trying to think of all the unintended consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we think we're doing this because of this, but then we find ourselves in a situation when all of a sudden these builders are building things because now they have that flexibility. And that's where I just want to make sure we really vet this out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, the current bylaw allows for that opportunity. The cap is the existing FAR and the existing building coverage. So
Right.
by definition, those 2 caps restrict the amount of square footage or the size of the structures. So for purposes of converting a single to a 2-family, yeah, so currently, the way the zoning bylaw is framed, single and 2-family are lumped together.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a desire to treat 2-family differently than single-family, there may be merit to that.
I just want to make sure that we're not inadvertently running the risk of allowing those, who
It
have
wouldn't-
certain,
It wouldn't be inadvertent.
well, okay, well, that,
It'd be with intent.
okay, so there could be situations then that by allowing more square footage, by saying yes to this,
Mm-hmm.
that, people could be closer to their neighbors. Things could be added on, whether it's another house or,
Mm-hmm.
or, an office that someone needs or an in-law apartment.
Yeah, so the setbacks, side, front, and rear, do have a cap. There's a certain point where the zoning board can't get any closer even if they wanted to. But as it pertains to floor area ratio and building coverage, what's being proposed is to remove the cap and allow the zoning board and property owners to engage and have a conversation. The zoning board isn't legally obligated to grant a special permit.
But there's no longer a cap.
There would no longer be a cap,
Yeah, it
correct?
wouldn't be a hard cap, yeah.
I thought they were also reducing.
On the floor area ratio and the lot coverage. There are
Correct.
still other dimensional caps.
Correct.
I did want to point out a concern that I had. There are certain properties in town that actually have multiple single-family structures on a single lot. And I think we want to make sure that we're not granting this relief to that sort of non-conforming use.
How do you suggest we do that?
I think we would add language that specifically exempts any existing lot that has more than two principal structures.
All right, that's fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then in terms, Paul Haverty, in terms of if we wanted to treat the single family and the two families separately, first of all, I don't know, do we want to? But second of all, if we did, how would we do that and what would that look like?
I mean, if you wanted to, you could include language in the bylaw that specifically states that increasing a property from a single family to a two-family is automatically considered substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood and not allowed.
Oh,
Well, that's interesting.
It would only be allowed in RC though.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, it's
So
only
RC
allowed in
you can have
RC, and
two
RC
families
is
now,
allowed
not
to have two families. They're specifically set up for two
Right,
families.
but I mean, do we want to have a rash of increases from single family to two families within RC?
Well,
That this might
again,
just
you
provoke?
wouldn't, if increasing those required them to utilize, this new provision that allowed the Board of Appeals to grant a special permit regarding lot coverage and floor area ratio. If they don't comply with those two provisions, then they wouldn't be allowed to increase from a single family to a two-family.
Yeah,
But
but it would
the
give
con-
them an
but-
incentive, but there's more of an incentive for them to do that, like if they're in RC, because now they can fit more building onto
Sure.
the lot,
Well,
right? And that's what I
and
don't
what I'm
want to
suggesting is you
incentivize
could,
it.
you could include language in the bylaw that wouldn't allow that to happen.
Or could we make this apply just to single families? Is there a way to carve it out that
I
like
mean,
says,
ultimately, that's what that language would accomplish.
okay, all right, then.
So I
right,
guess
well-
I'm confused about this whole conversation. We have 3 residential zoning districts with different size requirements. And one of those zoning districts is a more dense zoning district, RC, that intentionally was set up for 2 families on a half-acre lot. And what I'm hearing here is we don't want 2 families in town. And I'm having a real hard time understanding why.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying
Boy, it
is,
sure sounds like it.
I don't want more single families converted into two families. I think we have a nice mix. I think we have plenty of multifamilies. I think we've done our job. But I don't want to incentivize developers to come here and start converting all single families, because we're running out of single-family neighborhoods. So that's
You
where I
don't have the
stand.
ability to convert anything in RA and RB to a 2-family. with
Except
the-
for
with-
historicals.
Except for historical buildings.
This, just to clarify, this won't eliminate the existing opportunity for conversion,
Right.
In the
but it will,
Yeah.
in anywhere in town where it's currently
That's right,
permissible.
yeah.
It would just not provide any incentives to increase square footage beyond what's currently
Right.
allowed.
And
It- I guess I'm not so worried about a developer creating a 2-family as I am about buying up the small ranches and converting them into McMansions. And that's still a single family, but it's a single family on a small lot in a neighborhood of small houses. And that's exactly what this will allow.
Well, let me tell you,
And
I'm
that's
not
where the market
worried about
is.
that. Well, I'm not worried about that. In fact,
I'm
any
worried about
developer
that.
who wants to come and buy my next door neighbor's yard and build
Just
McMansion.
for perspective, RC requires 20,000 square foot for two-family. The FAR for RC is .25. That's 4,000 gross square feet of
That's
floor
right.
area.
That's a lot.
That's a
So,
lot.
so
for-
what I'm saying, so if you got two units, each unit's 2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So,
That's
you know-
not going to inhibit anybody.
Agreed. The question is whether putting in, you know, what's the market demand or what's the community value in allowing two families to be greater than 2,000 square feet each? And that's kind of where you're left with, is does the community view it as a hard cap? Or is the community open to, on a case-by-case basis, allowing the proponent to come to the zoning board and engage with their neighborhood?
So
Okay.
I think that I would be more comfortable if instead of this ZBA waiver system, that we simply changed the table of dimensional requirements such that the coverage was a maximum square feet per residential zoning area instead of a percentage. Because our problem here is that we have such a very, very high percentage of our lots that are undersized, that when you start taking a percentage of them, it doesn't leave much area for the house. It doesn't leave much square footage allowable for the house. Whereas if we simply said, for RA, your coverage can be whatever 10% of 80,000 square feet is, 8,000 square feet. If RB maximum was 15% of 40,000 square feet, and RC was 20% of 20,000 square feet, it would be much easier on both the building inspector and the ZBA.
May I suggest that what we don't have here is definitive commentary from the ZBA, and I suspect we should probably continue this and have the ZBA present, or at least somebody, you know, prepared to give the, you know, the full description of what this is all about. So I would.
And I'd like to have the Attorney Haverty as well here to be when when zoning's being proposed.
Oh, okay.
Because I wasn't
certainly
unaware
ask.
that he had concerns on this.
Okay.
And he made
And
recommendations.
when would
so-
that be?
Next meeting would be February 8th.
Okay. Let's, I'll take, I see, but I think at this point, the sensible thing is to get ZBA here and have them able to respond to any comments on this article. I think that would make more sense. I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but.
I do.
Okay, in that case, I would accept a motion to continue, and let's see if we can get ZBA here.
Is it open, is this a public meeting where we can speak?
It is, if I let you speak, but if we're going to continue it, I think that's, which I think may be the appropriate thing to do here, we can push it to the next meeting, and that's my inclination.
No comments about the duplex
No-
that was built across the street from my neighbor?
No, not yet. Let's get people here who are able to respond properly when those questions come up. Okay? Do I have a second
Motion to
motion?
continue.
Second.
February 8th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, motion, a second. In favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 6, okay. Yeah, you'll get a chance on the 8th, is it? Or the 8th or the 9th?
8th, February 8th.
Okay, February 8th. Thanks, Brian. Okay. Next item up will be 47 Chelmsford Street. That's, and I see we have a proponent. Give us your name and,
Yeah, first of all, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and all the board members. My name is Bhavnesh Khurana, like you can call me Bob, and I'm the owner of the 47 Chelmsford Street.
yeah.
And this property, I can give you the overview. It already been approved
Yeah.
two modification in the past. On May 25th, the planning board has a, I'm starting like, I'm giving you just an overview from the beginning. This property has a, sir, like very less parking space of total number 9.
Right.
And 6 has been used for the first floor with a 50% approved parking approval from the planning board already on May 25th. And on October 26th, this property is approved for like, I'm sorry, like I'm a little bit nervous. So this property is using in a mixed land use. First floor is the retail, for the retail portion, and the second floor, it's already been approved for the 2 apartments. One would be for the 1 bedroom and the another would be for the 2 bedroom with 3 dedicated space and 1 approval of the another, like from the planning board. So we have total 4 parking space used for the first floor, or for the second floor, sir.
Okay, understood.
I thought it was
So-
3, 1 for the 1 bedroom, 2 for the 2 bedroom.
No, ma'am. It was 3.5, but basically like I have 3 dedicated space existing and 1 approval for the all the planning board members on October 26th. So I have, like you can say, compliance of 4 parking space for the second floor. So my modification request for today is basically like the 2 apartments. 1 apartment we were using as 1 bedroom and the another apartment we were supposed to use as 2 bedroom. But now I have come here for the modification because I'm 100% compliance with all the bylaws, you can say, like parking space, the water calculation and everything. So I'm requesting this board, if in case like you have any questions, so I will be more than happy to answer it out.
All right, let me see if I can wrap this up a little tighter. Currently, there is a 1 bedroom and a 2 bedroom,
Correct.
and the request is to change this to 2 twos?
2 plus 2, sir, yes.
Okay. And is the addition of a parking space proposed, or is this just a change in the apartments?
What the applicants presented in.
Have to be.
Yeah.
And indicated this evening is that the math
Yeah.
for the previous modifications, the math related to the parking ratio
Yeah.
is compliant
Okay.
with tonight's modification.
Yeah, okay, if
So
it
we
is-
would
if it
need
is-
5 parking spaces for?
No, so the Center Village overlay requires 2 spaces for a 2-bedroom and larger, which will be 4 spaces.
Right.
He's indicating at the last modification, you waived the 4th parking space for the residential floor.
Because
Right.
it had a single bedroom.
Right, so what he's saying is mathematically, I have approval for 4 spaces minus 1. Physically, I have 3 spaces on site
Right.
for my second floor residential.
But now he's going to need 4,
Well,
not 3.
what he's presenting to you is you've already granted the waiver for 1 reduced parking space associated with the second floor residential use.
Because it was for 1 bedroom and
That's
2
right.
bedrooms, so it wasn't a
Yeah.
reduction.
I'm just
Yeah.
presenting.
And
Exactly.
it was 1.5, not 1 for the,
So this is the argument where I said this gentleman could put 5 bedrooms in this building.
But
based
there's
off
not
the
enough.
floor plan. And he mentioned at that time when we were doing 2 and 1. Now he's coming back with 2 and 2. There's still another room there. He can have 5 bedrooms in this building.
That's right.
And you will have 5, I'm sure.
I'm
But-
sure you will.
So that was my argument last time to the board that we talked about.
Yeah.
But we passed it.
So I wouldn't approve a second 2-bedroom without adding a parking space.
Who enforces that? That's the question. No one does, right?
No, you mean, well,
If we leave it the way it is right now, it's 2 and 1.
but then
Who enforces going into if it's 4 bedrooms?
Yeah, the problem is his layout.
he has a building permit that's consistent with your previous approval.
Right.
So he's currently constructing the floor plan per your previous approval.
A 1 bedroom and a 2 bedroom.
Correct,
With offices.
With offices.
There's offices there.
Yeah.
correct. So at occupancy, it will be verified in compliance. What happens moving forward is if there's a request for zoning enforcement, inspectors will get permission to enter, and they'll proceed with zoning enforcement from there. I mean, this notion happens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
And it's pretty easy for the town officials or the neighborhood to verify increased parking, increased activity, increased people, increased trash, increased water usage, sewer usage, electrical usage. So there's a variety of ways for the public and town officials to monitor this.
And sir, I couldn't put this application previously because I was not aware about the laws and everything. I cross-checked because I know it's a huge area. We were supposed to leave it, that area, due to the less parking space. I'm not asking any special more parking space favor. I'm just using the existing approvals, and I think as per the code and as per the laws, I'm eligible. Maybe I'm thinking this is my request. If in case you think this is as per my eligibility, just give me an opportunity to use that space. That's it.
And so just to play this forward, because I've engaged with Bob.
Yeah.
He physically has the ability to restripe the approved parking plan to show one additional space on site.
So he has the area for it.
Right.
He has the physical space. The problem with that, and the reason that Katie Enright, the engineer who initially got the approval from the planning board, did not show those spaces. In fact, she removed spaces. If you recall, 2 spaces were partially within the town right-of-way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he could have.
And it's on a corner that's
Correct.
difficult in terms of hitting those
The applicant could have
vehicles.
left those existing spaces striped, but in an effort to try to improve the situation, take away parking that was in the right-of-way and dangerous, and increase landscaping on site. So he came in with a plan that tried to balance the planning board's interests.
Okay.
If the board decides to continue or deny, like I said, his next step may very well be to go back to Katie, ask her to restripe.
And restripe it, yeah.
Yeah, that one additional space will likely not be ideal.
Yeah.
So the
May be
point is,
undersized.
Evan, we're not likely to approve that one additional space either because it is in a dangerous area.
No, it could be anywhere on site.
Yeah, she
It
could
may- right.
rework it.
Right, she may be able to restripe. So,
I'm,
And the risk on this property is that because it's partially residential and partially commercial, if the residential use takes up the parking spaces, the commercial customers are likely to park on the street at a dangerous intersection.
But we talked about the rationale for the original 50% reduction.
Yeah.
Was the town parking lot across the street.
right.
Yeah, and you know where they're going to park.
No one's parking on that.
Yeah.
His parking is on the street, though. That's part of the issue.
Not anymore.
Not anymore,
No,
ma'am.
that's.
None
been
of it.
removed.
No,
None of
ma'am.
it.
Not even a single.
Okay.
No.
All right.
All right.
So do we have a plan in front of us, or
You have
It's
a
a chart.
revised floor plan.
just
That's the
just
floor
the
plan,
floor
but I
plan?
don't think that's.
But we don't
Plan is
have
not changing.
the site plan.
I think the real issue here is not the floor plan, it's the parking plan.
Right.
I'll tell you what, I would like, I think some consideration ought to be given to reworking the parking. I'm not necessarily against going from 1 and 2 to 2 and 2, but I want to see a parking to match. And that may be something that can be done. And I would suggest if you're agreeable to it, a continuance so that you can make that happen.
So, no problem, board members. My duty to satisfy you, but
Okay.
let me explain you. I have existing 3 parking space.
I know.
Plus 1 waiver approval
Yeah.
from this honorable board, right? So I'm using only those 4 parking space waiver just to satisfy you. Otherwise, maybe I'm wrong, but my duty to satisfy you, you can give me what exactly the instructions. I will fulfill out to satisfy you.
I think what you're hearing from the board is they want to see a plan, make an attempt to physically show that fourth spot, even though they previously reduced that.
They need to add one? Oh.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
with the extra.
Yeah, so your point is,
We're putting in land.
well, I
Hold on.
might approve a reduction in parking for a single bedroom plus a two-bedroom.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
not going to approve a reduction in parking for two-bedroom.
Fair enough, ma'am.
That, yeah.
I can-
mean,
so
parking is a
I
real
have to
issue
come
on
with a
that
new plan
property.
with the additional
Okay,
parking space,
yeah,
right?
for the parking. That's the key issue here. I don't think it's the layout of the,
That's
of
okay.
the
All right,
bedroom.
so a
If you could do
continuation?
that, if you're
Yes, sir.
amenable to that, we
Come
will
on, yes.
continue.
Right,
I'm
move to
positively be
continue.
agree, and it's my duty to satisfy to this board, yes. Yeah,
What would
and I
be
will
a-
satisfy the requirement, that's what the reason I'm here.
Okay, very good, thank you.
I move to continue this discussion.
Do we have a
and-
date we want to continue it to, or do we want to leave it open and let you schedule it?
Why don't we do it for February 8th?
February
Okay.
8th, sir, please.
Okay, February 8th it
Until we have a
is.
plan.
Because I'm just telling you why, because sir, we need your decision, because if you guys approve, if all the board members will approve me, I have to change like,
Yeah, move a few walls around, yeah.
no, sir, walls are not important thing, but you can say the fire alarm, the sprinkler thing,
Yeah.
sir, that's a problem.
Okay.
We have to contact to every department, and if in case like there is any particular letter on this, I will be
Yeah.
more than happy if in case you have any questions on that.
All right, well, we have a motion to move this to the 8th.
Second,
I have a second? In favor?
Favor.
Aye.
aye.
All right, we'll talk about this on the 8th and
Sure, sir.
try to come back with something that shows an additional parking space worked in there. I think you may have the space to
Thank
do
you,
it.
thank you so much for all the board members.
Thank you for coming tonight. Okay, the next one is an ANR for 14 and 12 Chelmsford Road. It's a parcel exchange, I guess. You're on.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Brian Melissi with Haley Ward. Here representing V South Nuan, and it's a simple parcel exchange up on Kells Hill Road. This plan may look familiar to some of you. We were in front of you guys maybe a couple of months ago. 14 Kells Hill Road, which is the one on the right, was going to build a garage. He did build a garage. We had come in with a land swap plan that was approved. The garage was constructed, and we are back in here with a modified land swap plan, so that everything is in conformance.
Yeah.
Both lots remain in conformance. We're not touching any of the frontage. It's basically a one-for-one swap, a little piece of property taken from 12, given to 14, and vice versa.
Okay.
Just for some additional context, and correct me if I'm wrong, this was caught as part of an as-built related to a
Yeah.
foundation.
Gotcha.
I just trying to give you an example, because I know this comes up a lot, as to what procedures are in place to catch things sooner rather than later. That was it.
Exactly. The garage was moved a little bit too close to
Yeah,
the property
it happens.
line.
It happens.
Prior to framing and prior to, we go out to do the as-built plan, we caught that. He went back to the neighbor, thank God for nice neighbors. Otherwise, we'd be on our hands and knees asking the ZBA for a variance.
Yeah.
But in this case, it did not happen. So this plan, there's a note that goes on this plan that supersedes the old plan, so there's no confusion at the Registry of Deeds. And it really just kind of brings everything back into conformance.
All right, that actually makes
Checks and
strikingly good
balances.
sense. Any additional comments here?
Any
Anybody
question?
want to?
Brian, the point in the middle where it turns, where the new property line turns, what's the length from that point over to the opposite property line?
Here,
Yeah,
it's greater than 50 feet.
okay, that's all I want to know.
The reason why we would have to leave the old line on, the original plan had this at 25 feet. So we all know the regulations.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we had to subtract some of this
Yeah.
area
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
lot count. What we did is we put that back into conformance, made it 50
Okay.
feet.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay,
Good. Do I have a motion to grant the,
motion to approve
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second.
with no regard to zoning.
Yeah, with no determination as to zoning, is what
That's
we always
right.
put on them. In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, you've got it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay.
Let me go grab, I think the next applicant is in the hallway.
Okay, this is the Riverneck Road, Davis Company's project?
No, this is Chelmsford, I believe.
We just had it.
We just did Kelly.
No, we just did Kelso. That
oh,
was
never mind.
Kelso
I'm
that we
sorry.
just did.
Onto the big one.
Okay, never
I
mind.
think we have a
So what's
bunch
this
of new
one?
plans and
This
documents.
is Rainbow Ave.
Now, there's a lot of new material here. I'm going to see what the proponents have in mind, but we may want to try to tackle part of it, depending on what they're prepared to present.
So what's this one? It's 11 Rainbow Ave.
Which one?
I'm
That's
not-
with the zoning.
That was a zoning example.
Oh, that was
Oh,
the
that was
zoning
the
example.
zoning example. Okay,
zoning
now I get it.
Yeah. That's why it'd be good for them to come and
That's
walk
why I
through
couldn't
examples.
figure it out. Yeah. Okay.
There's no room for everybody.
Yep, you're up.
Just want to make sure that the audio visual is connected before we start.
Yes. We have the, I guess,
Yep.
Evan's working on that.
Working on it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I gave Ben co-host, so he should, here we go.
Okay,
Great.
very good.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again, for the record, Robert Buckley, Reman Bronstein. We were here about 3 months ago. We've been before this board or engaged in this project for well over a year. We think that we've put together a very comprehensive and responsive program based upon the feedback and the long-term objectives of the project. We've listened. We've tried to be responsive. I understand there's some concern about the timing, but the issues that we had to address here were quite extensive and required some thought and timing and planning, and we've done that. And this evening, we'd like you to take the board and the audience through some of the results of that endeavor.
Okay.
Just to bring you up to speed and then spend some time on an access road that we have spent a lot of time designing. So, next slide. This gives a summary of a number of the meetings that we've had, either with some of the stakeholders in the community.
Just, you guys, I don't think you don't have copies of this.
I do have a copy because I printed it, but
Okay, I did send it out earlier today.
It's on email, right?
Yes, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure everyone has it though.
We've had numerous meetings with the stakeholders in the community, obviously the planning board, a number of other municipal boards and department heads, trying to ascertain what the issues are and be responsible and address those issues over the process. Again, not a quick process. I know that people felt that we were being evasive. We weren't. We were trying to incorporate all of these comments into a coherent and well-thought-out plan. And again, I think we have that. Recently, we've had some meetings with your public safety department heads to talk about what we'll spend some time this evening on. And the initial reaction from them was very positive. Of course, they withhold their endorsement until the details are worked out. But according to and I was at that meeting, according to the summary, was that it solves a lot of problems, not only for this project, but potentially for the entire corridor. And as I said earlier, we've spent the last year plus negotiating, designing, and now we're presenting the solution. We've also spent a lot of time dealing directly with the peer review consultants of the town, who have vetted all of our assertions, all of our data, the plans. I think we've been responsive to every issue that they've raised, and I would say that we have relatively clean letters from all of them at this point in time, subject to their suggestion and our agreement to put conditions in the permit, if a permit were to be granted, to protect and make sure that those comments and recommendations were adhered to. Now, there's been a lot of debate about conditions and how are they enforced. The town has broad enforcement powers from a zoning standpoint with respect to conditions in a permit. And we're willing and agreeable to live by those, and it's our risk because it affects our ability to lease and occupy the building. So we're going to do everything in our power to adhere to those conditions, and we would expect the town to exercise their full authority to enforce those conditions. So what have we heard? We've heard that some of the more salient points are, should we have a bus stop on River Neck? What are the number of loading docks? Enforcement of existing truck direction. How would truck traffic enter and exit the site? What's the volume or the intensity of that truck traffic? And how do we ensure compliance and how do we monitor it? There was concern about the use as a last mile distribution, and as your consultant indicated early on, that it hasn't been designed to satisfy or to permit that type of use, but nonetheless, we actually have agreed to and proposed a condition that would prohibit that use. Again, adding protection. Hours of operation, sidewalks, building size, and what we'll spend some time tonight, the so-called Apollo Drive file lane enhancement to direct all of our truck traffic across River Neck out to 129 through the Apollo Drive site. So if you looked at it, and if you go back and review the early meetings, I think we spent 95% of the time at this meeting and other public forums talking about large vehicle truck traffic. I would submit for the consideration of the board that we have now eliminated that as an issue from our site, because all of our traffic, that type of traffic, will be directed not down River Neck, but directly across and out to 129. So any impacts relating to that type of use have been fully mitigated in our estimation, and there'll be some accounting. We'll be held accountable for making sure that that is the case. We have built-in feedback mechanisms, compliance mechanisms to make sure that what we say is what we do. So if you were to key this to the draft conditions that we've submitted to the board, and I believe they're up on your website, Evan?
Yes, we have them tonight.
Yeah. You can look at some of the conditions that were proposed. The truck routing, I can't see that. The Apollo Drive truck routing, as we said, will be the Apollo Drive access. The monitoring, we have researched and have for consideration some technical monitoring devices that will ensure compliance, provide a way to check our compliance, and to rectify any violations. We have capped the number of tractor-trailer trips at 40, which was suggested early on. We have reduced the loading docks to 25. We have agreed to provide signaling adjustments at key intersections and provided substantial funding for other traffic mitigation improvements. We will limit the hours of operation, and we will provide an additional mitigation package, what we call it a public amenity space. We heard that early on, that is there something that could be done in this area to provide enhancement for the neighborhood. And we've come up with some ideas on that. I'm now going to turn it over to Zach Cherniak from Ty and Bond to walk the board through the plans. Now, these plans are a culmination of about 8 or 9 months of intense work, and we will be hopefully be in a position in the next couple of weeks to file a site amendment or a modification of the site plan for the Apollo Drive site to implement these. So, Zach?
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Can we go just a little farther? Okay. My name is Zach Chornyak. I'm the site civil engineer with Ty and Bond for this project on behalf of the applicant. The lucky one that gets to talk about the Apollo Drive access road today, which we do think resolves all of the truck traffic issues, not only from and out of the River Neck site, but for the third-party truck traffic as well that I know has been a concern. So the applicant has secured a letter of intent to purchase land from the 300 Apollo site for the purpose of the private access road. On this figure here, it's a little tough to see up there. Maybe click one more time so the text comes up. There we go. Red is River Neck, or excuse me, yellow is River Neck Road. The dashed red is the River Neck development site. Orange is Bill Recker Road. Blue is the existing Apollo Drive, and green is the section of access road that currently exists that will be reconstructed to a two-lane access road for the purposes of River Neck Road property traffic. Next slide, please. Zooming in a little bit here, you know, our site is to the left. You can see the revised driveway access. I'll get into that a little bit more. Directly across River Neck Road is the Apollo Drive access. Again, it'll be a two-lane access road for truck traffic from the River Neck site. And on the right is the Apollo Drive that currently exists today. Next slide, please. Zooming in a little further here. Again, two-lane access road, and the purpose of this slide is to really show the cross-section of the road and kind of what we're talking about looking from the River Neck site down the proposed road. You know, two-lane road for truck traffic in and out. We have a nice landscape berm that's about 3 feet tall with evergreen trees on top of that. Supplemental plantings behind it. We're not messing with the existing vegetation that's out there now, so the you know, sight lines and screening only get more dense. And more sound will be attenuated. And I really want to point out that the existing curb cut for the Apollo Drive access isn't changing location. It's not getting any closer to the folks on Monmouth Street. In fact, the development of going from one lane to two lane is going to be expanded into the Apollo Drive property there.
Have you moved it further out, though, as I think it was brought up in one of the, so it's further away from, so the start of it is now further out?
Yes, it is.
How many feet?
It starts at the existing access lane and moves into the existing park.
But you didn't move it?
We did move it.
No, the whole street, like.
The whole access road, the existing curb cut?
Yes, to the middle. I think that was brought up during that you met with the neighbors. That was a public proposal.
I think, Mike Cantalupa from Bears. I think what you're referring to is that when we were in the community meeting,
right,
there was some concern expressed about the footprint of the access road, and it was too close to the neighborhood. We did move it such that it starts on the footprint of the existing road and expands into the parking lot. So we did move it in response to those concerns.
I thought, if I'm not mistaken, they actually asked you to put it in the middle, so it wasn't move the whole track.
We did not put it in the middle.
Okay, so that's not a compromise there. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Okay.
So the middle of the road moved into the Apollo Drive?
Well, the existing road is wider now, right?
I get that.
The road did
wider
move
into the
that's right. So the center line of the road actually moved toward the
correct
Apollo Drive property.
Yep. And on both sides, we have the appropriate landscape buffers per zoning requirements. The existing properties, you know, are between 60 and 80 feet from the edge of curb, and that's not changing either. Next slide, please. Just a quick rendering, again, looking from the River Neck site down the access drive, landscape berm, evergreens, plantings behind it, landscape buffers on both sides, just to give you a visual representation. Next slide. There we go. This is the revised site plan. You know, the big change you all notice is there's one access drive now as opposed to two. The new access drive is, you know, all traffic is in and out there, and all the truck traffic is going to go across River Neck Road down the Apollo Drive site. And I'll get into a little more detail on how we manage that more, but we are showing the EV charging stations, the bike racks, new sidewalks on River Neck Road and the driveways on site. All of the loading docks are still out in back, and we're reducing those from 52 to 25 loading docks from what was originally proposed, so a significant reduction, more than 50%. The plantings along the interface with Clark Ave and on the front of the building has been expanded to increase the sightline issues there. And again, the site access road is directly across from our Apollo Drive access spot. So here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. So the requirements of using Apollo Drive for deliveries is going to be included in the conditions of the planning board and passed on to the tenants, so it's continuous. And addresses for deliveries are going to be an Apollo Drive address. And I'll get into more details on why that's specifically good for dealing with the third-party truck traffic.
Yeah.
The private road will have gates and signage for controlling public access.
Yeah.
No public access to the road. The gates will be closed from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. And we are including the siren detection system that fire, EMS, and police requested. Press a button, gates open, so they can have that for emergency access. And then lastly, we're going to monitor traffic with some technology, some cameras, and I'm going to get into more detail of that in a minute here too. Next slide, please. I like these two slides. Existing right now, no matter where you're coming from, north, south, east, west, if you Google it, GPS it, it will take you down River Neck Road to the 201 199 site. And that's the concern with third-party truck traffic coming in and not having as much control over those third-party trucks that you don't directly contract with. Next slide. So these are the new directions. So by assigning a Apollo Drive address, regardless of where you're coming from, north, south, east, or west, all that traffic goes right to Apollo Drive from the south every single time. Yep. You guys can all try it on your phones. From there, there'll be plenty of signage that redirect truck traffic right over to River Neck, across the road, and down to our site. And we think that completely mitigates, the third-party truck comments and issues there. Mm-hmm. And then furthermore, to bolster, the whole control of truck traffic and traffic from the site in general, there's technology out there. This is one example, the MioVision Traffic Link software and hardware. It's cameras, 360-degree views, high definition, better than most of our TVs at home, and they're 4G modem capable, which is cellular-based, data transmission to project data to the cloud, which any authorized user can manage and view. Somebody in the town, the client, whoever. So we're going to track truck turning movements. It can identify between pedestrian, truck, cars, and can be programmed to manage truck movement out here. And I guess with that, I'll pass it back over to the applicant and from there.
Yeah. I would like to just comment on the presentation there. As you can see, we tried to anticipate and address all of the issues that were raised. The road would be designed in accordance with the town standards. And you'll see that on the plan that we would submit as the modification to the site plan for the Apollo Drive site. And why are we doing that? Because there may be a time in the future that the town elects to accept that as a public way for truck access, or general truck access. So we're cognizant of that. So you'll see that on the plan that we submit in the next few weeks, which would be an amendment to the Apollo site to provide for that. And finally, that as I said in the beginning, this does provide a solution that may or may not be available in the future, depending upon a different use. And it would take a vast majority of existing traffic that we heard was the major issue from day one off of River Neck Road and direct it to where it would have quick access to Route 3 and 495. So I think Melissa Robbins is going to comment on this. Is she on?
She's on Zoom.
Oh.
Good evening, members of the board. Just for the record, Melissa Robbins from the law firm of Farrell and Robbins. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight. I just wanted to speak briefly about the slide that you're looking at now. We've received feedback that we should have an amenity area for the community. We're highlighting a potential area there. It's in the dark green. It's towards the front of the site where we had planned some landscaping, but this is actually good space for a park of some sort. It's approximately 10,000 square feet in size. It could really be used for anything, a pavilion, for some outdoor activities like bocce or a fitness area or a playground. I think we could potentially work with the town and the nearby residents to design this and see what amenities they would want, the town would want in this area. It's a pretty significant size. And as you can see towards the front of that area, there's a light blue rectangle. This is to provide a bus stop for school bus pickups. It could create a good space for the bus to pull over, and we could put some bollards and a bench and a little seating area there so the bus could have a safe way to access it. And then to access the bus stop area, we've also provided a crosswalk, as you can see, coming almost directly across from Monmouth Street, so that they can get to the bus stop and can get to this new amenity area. And we would also propose some sort of flashing lights and beacons for that crosswalk so that people could safely cross the road there to get to the amenity area. That, Bob, I think I'll turn back over to you for the last slide.
Thank you, Melissa. In conclusion, for our presentation, we feel that this proposed use, satisfies the considerations that the board is required to factor into the decision with respect to the granting of a special permit. I think we have to start from the premise that something's going to be developed there. It's just not going to stay in its present condition. And when you go through the conditions that one would envision the board considering, we're reducing, this clearly provides substantial economic benefits to the community by taking an unproductive asset, turning it into a productive asset, and creating tax revenue. You know, the parking, loading, traffic, if you look at existing counts, they're 75% lower than what was there previously, and that's based upon your consultant verifying that. We've tried to be responsive to there's adequate utilities and infrastructure with respect to the proposed use, and it is a permitted use in the zoning district, but albeit by a special permit. And we've tried to restrict any obnoxious uses as perceived by the planning board, such as last mile distribution, by agreeing to limit that. No matter what what your zoning bylaw provides, we have voluntarily limited our use of that. And the impacts on the environment, we provide significant buffers, landscaping and public amenities. And again, the overall commercial development provides substantial economic benefits in terms of jobs, tax revenue, and opportunities for the town. So with that, we'll turn it over to the board. The board has any questions? I just want to reiterate that the technical plan, which this is not a concept plan. We have spent a lot of time and effort designing this plan, will be submitted for the board's consideration with respect to the other application because it's on the other site.
Right, understood. Okay, how to approach this. There's quite a lot here to chew on. Did you have something?
Yeah, Jeff Dirk, your peer review traffic consultant, is on Zoom with us.
Oh, good. Why don't we, well, let me frame a little bit where I think we ought to go. This is going to take more than one night, obviously, now that we have all this material. I'm going to suggest that we hear from the traffic consultant, that we then go around the board with basic questions that the board has. Then I'm going to suggest that we focus our attention tonight on the Apollo, on the connection through the lot, and that we will then, at a subsequent meeting, we'll take up the stuff on the other side of River Neck with the building layout, the building design, and things that have to do with that. I think that's a way to split this up.
I think that's good intentions, but I don't think we may be able to stay that way. I don't think it's that clear cut, but we can certainly
Well, no,
try
it's not completely clear cut. I agree because there's interaction, but we got to split it up somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, in that we do not yet have a revised plan for the building lot.
Right.
I don't think it's reasonable to have that on the table for discussion tonight.
Okay, so but we certainly have some very detailed stuff here
on the
on the
street and the home.
on the street and the connection.
But I also think that we haven't had, last time they were in front of us and we postponed
Yeah.
it, there was a bunch of folks that wanted to speak and we didn't let them speak.
Yeah, well,
So
we
that
will
was a
let-
long
yeah.
time, so I think we can't just tell them, no, you can't talk about other things. Because they're all here, there's a lot of people here.
This
And
is,
this has been
Anita, my
very stressful.
concern is that if we open up the floor for discussion on a plan that we don't have, we're wasting everybody's time.
No, but maybe they can listen, and maybe when they come back with a plan, there may be something here that's a good idea that they may incorporate. So I think we should allow people to speak.
well, we will certainly have people speaking. That was not my intent to not let anybody speak. I'm just trying to steer the conversation in ways that'll be productive for all of
That
us.
sounds like a good roadmap, and should we
Yeah.
listen to the traffic consultant?
Yeah, let's listen to the traffic consultant, and then I suggest we go around the board and ask general questions based on the presentation, and then we'll open up the public hearing and try to gather as much information as we can. Okay, traffic consultant?
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Jeffrey Dirk with Vanessa & Associates, the board's transportation consultant on the project. And I appreciate the introduction, Mr. Chairman, because my comments are really going to be focused on exactly what you've suggested, is the new access road that's been proposed for truck activity. We did receive materials from the applicant focused on that new connection and some analysis that went along with that as well. The plan, similar to what you have seen tonight, some of this is new information to us as well. So just as the board has seen some of this information, it is the first time I'm seeing it, and some of it, we will have some comments. I would just preface that with saying that there's a lot of good things that have been presented tonight that, we need to work out the details, I think, with the applicant so we can assist you with conditions. But I think a lot of the technology that they presented is something that does achieve and responsive to some of the comments and concerns that we had as a part of our review. So focusing on the new access that's been posed, we think it's a good idea. As I looked at it, and if you had a chance to review my initial letter as it relates to the access road, there were a lot of details that we needed to see to be comfortable with this connection. In particular, these design details, some of which you've been presented to you tonight. We think from the standpoint of getting the truck traffic off of River Neck Road, we think that's a significant benefit of what's being proposed tonight. And the concern that I had, and I think this is one of the first times I ever put in a comment letter that I was very concerned about the design of the intersection itself, not so much the fire roadway, but just this situation of having large tractor trailers not making turns, but crossing the roadway. And as we all know, a truck starting from a stop position, especially a fully loaded truck, it takes some time to get up the speed and then cross the roadway. So in particular, the concerns that I had raised initially dealt with the fact of, as you're driving along River Neck Road, you're not expecting a truck to be crossing, especially a truck that might be moving slow as it tries to cross the roadway. So that was kind of the impetus of my initial set of comments. After that, we did work with the applicant on some design features of the intersection, which, as I've seen tonight, have since been enhanced and made it only better. The design features that you're seeing there, in addition to the control that's being proposed by way of the gates on the road, which is really to control and limit that access to trucks and emergency vehicles, there are also improvements along River Neck Road, and those improvements as it relates to the intersection are the radar speed feedback signs, one being installed in either direction on River Neck Road as you approach the intersection. And then also there's a dynamic truck crossing warning sign, and dynamic being that the border around the sign. So the sign it's a yellow sign, it says trucks crossing ahead, and then the border of that sign is a flashing LED indication. Probably solar powered. So those two features achieve, first, hopefully a speed reduction as it relates to River Neck Road approaching the intersection. And then secondly, the enhancement of the flashing yellow border truck crossing signs will also add to motorist awareness. What we're trying to achieve with both of those is to make sure that drivers are aware that trucks will be crossing at this location, because it is an unanticipated situation. So we want to make sure motorists are aware of that. The other thing is the speed feedback signs will result in a modest reduction in travel speeds as it approaches. The key part of that is making sure that drivers have appropriate sight lines. The applicant has demonstrated that they exceed the minimum sight lines that are required for safety. That being that if you're driving along the road and a truck is crossing, you can see the truck and you can stop if you need to. And that's the critical sight distance. We had suggested that we wanted something more than that, and I think they're able to provide that to increase it as much as possible. So I think we're achieving a good balance. What I'm weighing here, and I know the board is doing the same thing, is the safety as it relates to crossing at a controlled intersection by means of the signs and enhancements we're talking about, as it relates to vehicles driving along River Neck Road, and weighing that safety against trucks driving up River Neck Road, where we know it's a residential, thickly settled residential area is probably a good way to classify it, with people walking. And so as we weigh those two things, it's better to have the trucks not using that section of River Neck Road where people live and walk, where there currently aren't sidewalks, and move them to this crossing where we can design features so that it can happen in a safe manner and that motorists are able to stop if there is a truck crossing across the roadway. So in weighing that benefit, we think that this is a significant improvement over sending the trucks on River Neck Road. So we do think it's good to advance this. The concept plans and the enhancements we've seen tonight, we think will just make this connection better from what we had originally said was an acceptable solution. So that's where we are with respect to our review. We will have some additional details to work out with the applicant for some of the things that we've seen here tonight. But we think all of this is just a betterment from the plans that we had reviewed, and the applicant has been responsive to the comments we've offered. So I think from the standpoint of the traffic review, we're really down to refining the details so that you have a good set of conditions that hopefully you can be comfortable with to the extent that you are amenable to approving the project. So I'll turn it back to the board, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, well, I have a list here, but before we get to that, any specific questions for the traffic consultant? Thank you very much for the review. I imagine we'll be hearing from you again as further details get laid out.
Since we just got it yesterday, I mean, I appreciate the summary, but I'd like to have the time to read it and really look at it.
I think
before I can make any comments.
Yeah.
Jeff,
okay.
I have a quick question, Jeff. The speed limit on River Neck is, am I right that it's 35?
Suggested.
30, I think it is.
30.
And then would we expect?
Yes, it's 30.
Okay, but the question is the speed limit, so 30. And then would we expect there would be a reduction in the actual speed limit coming to these slowly crossing trucks?
So it's not a reduction. So what we're trying to achieve is a reduction in the actual speed that people are driving. And so one of the questions we had posed to the applicant was that they measured speeds of about 32 miles an hour, just about where this proposed crossing is. Back in the original traffic study, they had measured speeds closer to 43 miles an hour, and that was more at the easterly end of the project site where they were developing a new driveway that has since been removed. So we had questioned that to say, how do you explain a 10-mile-an-hour reduction essentially in travel speeds over a short distance on the section of roadway based on those measurements? It is, I think we're all familiar with that roadway, that as you travel to where the site is and then you head toward Lowell, the road is much wider. The road's not wider, but the trees are set back further from the road, development set back a little bit further, so speeds increase, and that makes sense. As you're traveling toward the neighborhood area, so heading toward 129, there is a speed reduction that gets, instead of 43, it's probably the prevailing speed is closer to about 35 miles an hour. So it's not 30, it's in excess of that. But it's not 43, which is much higher as you're heading to the east of the project site. And that does make sense based on the characteristics of the roadway. What we're trying to do is get the speeds down closer to no more than 35 miles an hour. If we can get them down to 35 to 40 miles an hour, at least where the truck access is, those sight lines that are available at those speeds are much better, I should say. You don't need as long of a sight line for safe operation or for enhanced operation if the speeds are lower. So that's what we're trying to achieve with these devices. And they have been demonstrated to have that level of a speed reduction. The speed feedbacks, radar speed feedback signs, generally you can get, somewhere around, if you can get a 3 to 4 mile an hour reduction in speed. And so if we can get the speeds closer to 40 coming from east to west, and then hopefully we can get a speed reduction closer to 30 going from west to east, which would give us beneficial sight lines.
But we would not anticipate that those speed limits would actually be reduced.
Well, the speed limits.
Yeah, that's like Mass DOT sets speed limits, even though if it's a local road, if you want to change the speed limit, you have to apply to Mass DOT for what's called a special speed regulation. I mean, that certainly can be done, but I will tell you that 30 miles an hour is probably the best you're going to achieve for speed.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right.
And given their way of measuring it.
Mike?
Jeff, what would trigger a full signal light at that intersection? And the other question I have, that if a truck does pull up, that does turn red, what's the threshold for that? And then also, if this did go through, what is the intersection now at 129 in Apollo with the increased traffic of existing Apollo Drive and this now location? Is that going to have them put a light down there? Has that been looked at?
Yeah, that's a good, and I'll start kind of backwards and work forward from that. So the amount of, I will say one of the things that the applicant has proposed, and it's a good thing as it relates to conditions, is throttling down the number of trucks that can be there. So I think they're limiting it to, if it's 40 trucks a day or whatever, I think that's what I heard, but somewhere around that range. Without even absent them putting a cap on it, I think what the prediction was is you'd have about no more than 10 trucks, something less than 10 trucks during the peak hour. If they're agreeing to no more than 40 trucks per day, you will not see more than 10 trucks during any 1 hour period of the day for the facility. So, 10 trucks over the course of an hour is not something that, it certainly doesn't alter delays in queuing at intersections. I mean, trucks are longer, they take a little bit more time to go through the intersections, but if we're talking about looking at it over the course of an hour, it's not going to have a significant impact in terms of needing to retime traffic signals or install traffic signals. The level of truck activity that they're talking about, again, given that the road is only used by trucks, you would not meet any criteria that would allow you to install some type of positive traffic control that would, let's say, stop traffic on Riverneck Road so trucks could get across there. So that wouldn't be an option. I had thought about some options in terms of some type of dynamic warning signs where, if a truck was coming up to the intersection, that maybe some signs or something would start flashing so if you're on Riverneck Road, similar to what, a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which we're all familiar with, instead of having a push button where someone pushes the button to cross and the lights start flashing, this would be something where if it was controlled by the gates, let's say coming across the fire access road, the truck would trip a sensor that would start lights flashing along Riverneck Road. So you'd know that there's a truck, it's waiting, and that it's going to be crossing. So if you're a motorist approaching, you'd know that that's going to take place. That is easily done on the fire access road portion, on the Apollo Road side. Not so easy done on the driveway to the project site, because you need to differentiate between the trucks and the passenger cars that happen to be exiting. So it's not that it's impossible to do that. I just, I don't have a practical solution to be able to how to actuate it from the project side. Easy to do from the fire side. So I don't know if that answered the question, but I think we couldn't install a positive traffic control, meaning stopping traffic on Riverneck Road to allow for a truck to go across. There may be some opportunities to have some type of actuation to a warning sign that would let motorists on Riverneck Road that know that a truck is going to be crossing.
Okay.
Like a railroad crossing.
Yeah.
Well, even like the bike path crossing.
Yeah, like the bike path crossings.
Which is motion activated.
Well, you don't push a button for that.
And Jeff, just a clarification, this is only for trucks that are single trailer, right, tractor trailers. We're not looking at any of the other box trucks in this analysis.
Correct, that's exactly, well, that's my understanding, is that the large tractor trailers,
Right,
that
that's
this
the
is
only
the road that they would
thing,
use.
and we're avoid all the other ones. Okay, and then and they did the analysis using the lowest use possible for the impact of a warehouse versus, when we had the distribution center on 129 that came in, they used the highest, they did a traffic study on the highest potential for a grade. I mean, they could have even gone up to, general light industrial, which still wouldn't have mirrored what the folks on 129 when they came in and proposed their distribution center. So I've got a concern for that. I think we should do
And
that.
that's where Yeah, that's where the monitoring program comes into play, because we always say, the applicant should present to you kind of what they feel is, the highest traffic volume potential for the project site. I think we talked about initially, looking at those various classifications and whether the building is currently laid out would support a different type or more intensive warehousing type of use. And that conclusion in looking at it was that as designed, the building wouldn't support those type of uses at the present time, based on the technology that we currently have, which is evolving. But that being said, I think always the caution to the applicant, and I say the same thing to my clients, is that I think a traffic monitoring program is something that is typically put in place for warehouse facilities. Almost all of the warehouse facilities that I work on, either as a peer reviewer or representing the developer, we have a traffic monitoring piece of it to answer exactly what you said, which is to say, we're going to document the actual traffic volumes and characteristics of this project site. And then the key part of that is, what happens if we exceed what we'd estimated in the traffic study? And how do we deal with those unmitigated impacts? And so that needs to be built into the traffic monitoring program. And, that's where the devil's in the details, but you can put a condition on the project, and I think the applicants agreed to this, to monitor the traffic and basically provide information to the town that shows that they're completely in line with the projections that they've made and that have been presented to you, and that the impacts are consistent with what they presented. And then if in fact they're not, the town has recourse to be able to say, well, then additional mitigation is required, and these are the things, those steps that you will take to either address the unmitigated impacts or bring yourself back in line with what the original projections are.
Okay.
And just to add to that real quick, the ITE projections, those are numbers that are, based on all sorts of survey data over time, and they're numbers that you use in the engineering world to apply to how you're looking at the level of service impacts for a building on various intersections around, right? So in our case, we're limiting the traffic as well to 75% of those numbers, regardless of which ones you look at. I just want to point that out. So
okay,
significantly less.
Can you clarify how many trucks? I just heard Jeff mention 40 trucks.
It's 40 round trips.
I thought it was 40 round trips, so it's 80 trips.
80 trips.
Okay.
40 in each
80,
direction,
So
basically.
they're going to see 80 trucks, not 40.
Correct. It's 40 round trips.
Coming,
Okay.
40 going.
So 80. All right.
Jeff, can I ask you another question? In terms of the monitoring program, what would be our leverage for enforcement of that subsequent after-the-fact mitigation?
So you put something into the monitoring provision that basically says if the monitoring program demonstrates that there's an exceedance, and you define what that exceedance is, and it's general that they get it. It's generally that you apply a 10% variation. So if you say to them, if you measure the traffic volumes and either the daily, the peak hour, or the number of truck trips exceeds what's been predicted in the traffic study by more than 10%. So if you look at like the 80 truck trips,
Yeah.
if they have 88 round trip truck trips, that would be an exceedance. And then you would define what they would need to do if there's an exceedance. And so what it would do is basically the building inspector would be the enforcement officer, and then would have requirements as to what the permit would specify what the applicant needs to do. It could also specify that the applicant has to return to the planning board and document what the impacts are as a result of it, and then would say to you what it is that they're going to do to address those impacts. So then you would get the opportunity to be able to review and comment on that. So there's a number of ways to structure it, and one of those can be that the applicant comes back to you. But we would want to, in the condition, define for the applicant what the board's expectations are, that if there's an exceedance, what you expect that they would do. So we would define all of that in the condition.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and that's something we would have to have some conversation about how we wanted to treat that.
And how we want to calculate that.
Yeah. Okay. And any more questions from the board?
Yes, why, I do.
Okay.
'Cause, again, they had a meeting, and they had, with the citizens, many of them asked them why they did, to move it in, they bought Apollo Drive, big area, plenty of room to move that access road right to the middle where it wouldn't be impeding on either neighbors, those on McFarland and or on Mammoth. So why did you not go down that path?
The subject of our agreement with the owner of Apollo Drive is just for the footprint of the access drive and the parking spaces that are next to the access drive. There's a small parcel of land on Riverneck Road, but we do not have access to the middle of the site to be able to move the road into the middle of their land. So that's the only thing that they would sell us.
Okay, and your and then I like to just make a point of clarification, because you had a list there of all the things that you had listened to. I wanted to go on the record. I never said last mile distribution. I don't know if you did, but I never said last mile. I said distribution, and that's very different. And then hours of operation. I never said the hours that you're proposing. Was it 12 to 5 a.m.? I never said that. Never said that on that December very first meeting when I proposed it, because this in this neighborhood is an office park. So by 6 o'clock, cars left, and people can enjoy it. I put my kids to bed, or when they were little, put my kids to bed at 8 o'clock. And you're looking at an hours of operations of trucks going up till midnight. And you haven't done anything to mitigate that. You just moved the problem. So I'm kind of disappointed, and I've got to say I'm really disappointed that there hasn't been more working with the community after all the meetings you've had. But please take my name off of that list that said that those are my requests, because those were not my requests. I was clear about them.
We didn't intend to quote anybody. We were paraphrasing issues that were raised, and then we proposed a response to the issues. So we did not intend to quote you. You just identified the issue that hours of operation is an issue, and our response was certain hours. So if we represented that we quoted you or gave more detail to the actual issue that was raised, it was really just to paraphrase the issue and how we addressed it.
Yes, and I do want to compliment, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, does a wonderful job of being able to present things in your most favorable light.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that the record's straight, that, he's very well-spoken, you guys are very well-spoken, you're professionals, I get it. But when it looks like you're coming out and you've worked with us, we're going to make sure what the facts are, just what they clearly are, and how much you've worked with us.
Okay.
And that's it. Thank you.
All right. Mike?
I'm good.
Paul, you good?
I'm good.
Guys?
I have another question that's not really for, I think it's for, Paul Howard, are you still on the call? Yes.
Yes, I am.
So in one of the letters that we got, I don't know, today or this week, one of the neighbors had stated that there was an agreement made when the fire lane was put in, that it was only to be used as an emergency fire lane and not for any other purpose. So I was just wondering if such an agreement was made, who would it be made with, between the parties, and where would that be documented, and is there any teeth to that agreement?
I don't have any idea where that agreement would have been made or where it's documented or who it would be between. If it's part of a prior permitting condition, and that permit was issued by the planning board, then you would have the authority to modify that condition. If it's from another board, then they would have to go back to the other board to get that condition modified. If it's between private parties, then it needs to be resolved through the private parties. If it involved property owners that have now been consolidated, under a single owner, then they can resolve it on their own.
So Paul Haverty has not been asked to review the 300 Apollo file? As you heard this evening, depending on how tonight proceeds, they're prepared to submit those fully detailed plans.
Yeah.
Public notice, advertisement, modification of the previously approved special permit. I can tell you that the special permit itself does not have any conditions. It references a plan, which is pretty common for the decisions back then. And then obviously there are minutes. My understanding is minutes are not legally enforceable. So if and when we get to that point, sure, we can have council review the permitting history. But as I indicated, my initial review, 'cause I've been involved in this, that's one of the first things we would look at, is whether there was a specific condition, a restriction, a deed restriction, something beyond just a reference to a plan. And it does not appear to be any.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I have one more legal question, but I don't know if it doesn't really have anything, well, it does have to do with the access road. We originally, when we talked about this project, we gave a determination of applicability last October, and that was for a plan at the Mercury site. And so when this access road site was brought forth, I questioned whether the applicability, the determination of applicability would be conveyed to this part of the plan as well. I was told in the past on previous projects we've worked on that the applicability goes with the land, but so would it not go with the land on River Neck Road? And how would we need a new determination of applicability for the access road? Or I don't understand how the applicability applies to that.
Well,
and so I have not been asked to look at this question previously.
I had asked it and was told it wasn't relevant, but now I'm asking you.
And again, I would have to take a look at the bylaw and try to determine whether or not a separate determination would be required.
I would like it if you would do that, please.
Yeah,
I can certainly.
Is there any reason that they would need to use the Bayard for this road project? Because that's what the determination of applicability would be for.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing anything there that is not underlying zoning.
That's a fair question. So the issue would be whether or not there are any zoning constraints with regard to using this access road, which would be a private road. So you would have to take a look at whether or not the use that's being proposed is allowed in the entirety of the zoning districts through which this roadway goes. And if it's not, but they're within the base odd and could get relief from there, then maybe it becomes applicable. And if that's not the case, then it may not.
Well, I'd say it's probably, because I would imagine it's a fairly quick check to see if there's anything else applicable. We probably ought to make that check.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. That would be good.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
I just want to speak to this access road and when this all got zoned, because we did get a letter, and I do want to mention all the letters.
Yeah, we got a whole pile, by the way. I answered a number of them, and they will go in the record.
Because I think the Smarts, I believe, may have touched upon this, but since I have been here in this neighborhood my entire life, I kind of know the history of it. But when this development went in Apollo Drive, and this is documented in the minutes, there was an issue regarding this access road, and it was never to be used as a public way, ever. That was the agreement with the neighbors. We do have some people, like I said, the Smarts, I believe, are maybe via Zoom. There may be others who were here for those meetings and that agreement with the town. Now, back then, they didn't put it in the permit, but that was part of the agreement that they made. And these people still own these houses. So I think that needs to be said and on the record. I'm sure others who were here will come up and speak to that, but I do want to make sure that that's clear. And this, by the way, was brought up in that meeting with these folks.
Yeah, I will note that what's before us now is not a public way. Now, there are some aspects of its design and layout that could allow it to be a public way, but that's not a decision that the proponents can make. It's a decision the town would have to make.
I understand that.
We might not want them to make
now
that
we're
decision.
splitting hairs, because it's acting as a street to deliver commercial, so let's
not with the gate, nope, not with gates and buttons.
Okay.
Yeah.
The agreement was made, only emergency vehicles.
Yeah.
That was the agreement.
And who was it made with? We need to find out.
It's in the minutes.
Okay. But who? Who are the bound parties?
But it sounds like it never got documented.
Right, there's a lot of things that didn't get documented. But we also have, by the way, I believe the chair of the Conservation Committee here, speaking of things not being documented, you may want to ask him to give us what's going on that side of it too. But anyways, I digress, but I do want to put that in for the record.
Okay, very good.
One last thing, the bus stop, I can't really see on that plan. I don't know if you have a better detail.
I think I may have.
There's one in the.
Here, you can pass this over. Here's my set. It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, let me find it here.
Well, while they're looking at that, I don't have a lot of specific traffic questions here, but I have a couple of items. I'm curious, clearly there's going to be a lot of traffic data captured. And I'm interested as to who might have access to it. In particular, I'm wondering if the town would have access to that. And I see a yes, so that's, I wanted to make sure that we could look at it as well. I mean, the town standards on the road is good. I'm just from general civil engineering point of view.
Well, particularly if it's
the one thing I noticed, and I don't know if there's a little bit of wiggle here, but I suspect there might be. Looking down that road, there's a 3-foot berm between that and the neighborhood. That's what's proposed. I'm wondering, I don't know enough about the creation of berms and the putting of trees or fences on top of them, but is there some possibility that that berm could be increased in size? Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing it probably can be. It's also a practical matter. I don't know how big a berm does what. That actually might be a question for the traffic guy. I mean, would adding 2 feet make a difference?
I think it becomes a mechanical exercise there. We have to look at, how wide it is, what the slopes are, as soon as you get over a 1-to-1 slope, you're worried about erosion. The intent is really to raise up the elevation of the root balls for those evergreens, and those grow 10, 12 feet tall.
Right,
so
exactly, and if you could raise the whole thing up, I mean, I was a double E, not a civil, so I don't remember the exact angle that dirt falls off the side of a pile of dirt. Although I remember there was a number.
It falls.
60-some-odd degrees or something?
Something like that, yep.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I do have a question for them. For the road project, are there any Conservation Commission, wetland, whatever, considerations in there?
So as part of the, whole concept here, we are reviewing that. We're reviewing that as well as, the zoning implications and things. So the concept has been hashed out, and we're still working through those details.
Okay.
We will need to deal with them if they do come up.
All right.
Okay, understood. Let me see what else I had. Sightlines, radar. That was a very interesting idea to give it an Apollo Drive address. I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
But I can see how that might have some influence.
Goes that way? Like, it's not just the truck. So now, like on GPS, all traffic will be going that way.
That's the hope.
So we're talking cars, so now.
The condition is going to be structured more toward deliveries to the site. This is how to control the third-party truck traffic, right?
Yeah.
If the tenant's there and they have their own trucks, it's easy to deal with where they come in and go out. If they have a third-party delivery coming in, the tenant's going to be required to make them go to this Apollo Drive address, which forces them to go to the Apollo Drive as opposed to River Neck.
But if it's in the GPS, that means all the cars are going to be routed that way.
Not necessarily. It depends on the address you give
River Neck
them
Road
to
will
stick
still have
in.
an address, but the stipulation is for deliveries. These delivery people need to use this address.
Yeah.
And that's something that the tenant can control.
Right. Understood.
So if the tenant has its own trucks, then that won't.
If the tenant has their own trucks, they can control that easily as well, regardless
Okay.
of the address.
So then we're relying on the tenants to give, like, so FedEx, I need a FedEx, I'm going to say, this is my address.
Correct.
As opposed to, this is my address.
Correct, and that's going to be a condition.
Okay, but then we have no control of monitoring that or making that.
Well,
or
we
checking
do
on
have a
that.
little control of monitoring that. We're going to do the traffic monitoring with the cameras and all that as well, which will track all this stuff in the town. I'm not sure how that, who the point person will be or how that metric works out.
we would need to
We'll
work
figure
that out, yeah.
If that's of
the
interest to
concept
board
itself.
members, may I suggest you ask counsel? Ask Paul Haverty, to what extent can the town put conditions that are enforceable, and how far can the town go within a special permit to ensure compliance? I can tell you, we all know in Westford, they have a provision right in their special permit for the asphalt plant.
Right, sends them left on
It says
on Route 40.
at any time, the planning board can deem the special permit null and void, based
Well, well,
based
well, we
upon
may-
violations.
We certainly could do that, and
So
we may
I just,
also.
if the notion is that this doesn't work,
No, I don't think
I
that's
suggest
what
you ask counsel, so that we can have a full, council's here, we can have a full and open dialogue about the facts related to this proposed scenario.
So Paul, what about that?
So I think we have actually discussed this question before, and the town certainly, and the board has the right to impose conditions that address which way traffic will move leaving the site. You're certainly much more constrained in terms of what conditions you can impose on traffic once it leaves the site, but you absolutely have the right, and you have done it in the past, imposing, right turn only restrictions, one-way restrictions, things of that nature, within a particular site. It's a condition, that was included in the Walgreens decision several years ago, limiting vehicles exiting that to right turn only. You can certainly restrict the sorts of vehicles that can use a particular entrance as part of a special permit decision.
Okay.
The amount of leeway that you have in this process greatly exceeds what the town could do in terms of trying to restrict traffic on existing roadways, in particular state highways.
Okay, got you.
So you do have a great deal of discretion.
Okay, thank you.
Can we, if for penalties, if we're inflicting penalties, can we ask an applicant to put money in escrow? So we don't have to keep going back and go through in a lawsuit to have to do all the administrative. Is there, can we say that we want $1 million in escrow?
I don't think you can accuse somebody of doing something before they
No,
actually
but you can do
do
an
it.
escrow that after, a year, right, of monitoring, it gets released, or a certain portion gets released as time goes by and they've proven they're a good tenant. I'm not saying it stays there forever. I do business deals all the time like this in, a year, 18 months. So the town's not.
What would the purpose of that escrow be?
Just so the town doesn't have to go through, all the cost of litigate. Can we say all right, you're
Limiting
saying
your
40,
paycheck.
if you're 40.
You still have to litigate it.
No, but if
Right,
if
but
we
so
have, if we
we're
have
talking about-
monitoring and we charge them every time it goes over, then we can just pull it out of escrow.
That becomes a fine, effectively, backed up with a,
But
which
that's the whole
might be
purpose,
reasonable.
right? Otherwise, if there's no monetary
There can be.
issue here, then how are we gonna, they're gonna be long gone. That's
So-
their
so
business
if you
model. They
have-
build and leave.
If you have a consistent violation in terms of the estimated number of traffics, with that 10% buffer that Mr. Dirk had discussed, I think one thing that you can consider is requiring them to come back to the board And the board could consider actually reducing the number of bays that are allowed to be open at any one time on the property. If you're finding that the use as proposed is excess of, what has been discussed during your process, one of your potential options is to impose a condition that would reduce that amount.
But we've been told repeatedly from the traffic reports that it's not bays that drives truck traffic, it's the size of the building. So, again.
Well, remember, we're limiting the truck traffic.
Yeah, they are limiting the traffic. I'm going to guess that probably the most effective condition would be one that would bring them back to the board under certain circumstances, and then it could be, then the range.
Revocation of the special permit.
Yeah, right, or we pull the permit, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, so that's probably the mechanism with the most teeth, but ultimately. But that can be worked out. That's part of nailing down the conditions. Okay, anybody else have something burning they need to say from the board's perspective? Because I'd really like to get the public portion of this going.
Just sustainability. We never brought that up on this.
On the road?
No, for the whole project that's never been addressed.
We don't have a new plan for the new project, for the whole project.
But I think we've all had some conversations about it.
Yes,
I think we should,
have.
I
think what we can do here is suggest that something be said about sustainability and what's planned, and that be brought to us so we can have a look.
Thank you.
I totally agree with you there, and our sustainability committee has been in my ear.
Right, exactly.
Very good.
Tenacious.
Yeah, tenacious. Tenacious is the word.
He's watching.
Yep. Okay. All right. With that, I would like to open up the public hearing. I'm going to ask, let's try this time around, to the extent that you can, to keep this on the road access part of it. I think this is not going to be over tonight. I think we all know that. So let's try to compartmentalize it as much as we possibly can. And hi, how you doing?
Hi, Chris LaValle, 10 Edgewood Street, Precinct 10, Town Meeting Rep. I was going to be talking for quite a while tonight because there are a lot of outstanding issues that I did not get to address last meeting.
Right.
But I will limit it to the traffic and to one other component that the proponent did bring up tonight.
Okay, and we'll make sure you get plenty of time next time around, don't worry.
So I did want to first address the use being by right. So even if the use is allowed by right, which we don't know because we don't actually know what the use is going to be, because the building is a flexible building that's designed to have multiple possible uses. So the proponent can't really say the use is by right, because the building could support a marijuana facility, which is not allowed by right. It could support heavy manufacturing, which is not allowed by right.
We have one or two others, yeah.
Yeah, and a number of others. So while the use is not by right, and also the size and impact are certainly not by right, even if you agree that the use is. The whole reason for special permits is that we want to limit the size and the impact. So let me just talk for a minute about the size. Actually, I'll save that for next time.
Okay, yeah, thanks. And that is going to be a big topic next time,
yes.
I'm well aware.
So I wanted to address a couple topics on the second traffic impact peer review. I'd be curious to see what the opinion of the police chief regarding this new intersection is. Supposedly the applicant has talked to them, but there's no letter, no testimony about how safety officials view this new intersection.
Chris, we don't have an application for it yet.
Right. But the plan is here.
The concept is here,
The concept, yes, the concept is here.
That's what we can talk about.
He said he talked to the police chief, and the police chief is supporting this concept.
Yeah.
It would be nice to hear from the police chief about that.
I'm sure we'll get a letter.
When the.
When we get an application.
This presentation has been submitted to Traffic Advisory Committee.
Okay, good.
Those are the people who have been involved in the meetings. When there's a fully detailed submission, like all submissions, they'll be distributed to departments for technical
We'll get all the
comment.
public safety letters. Thank you.
And on comment number 5 of that peer review, the response was that committed funds for mitigation measures were committed. The question is how much? It doesn't say, other than it might be different than the 100 that's condition 4, then we don't know. Site distance, the site distance report. I could be wrong, but it seemed like the data that was used for stopping distance on River Neck is for passenger cars. There are currently trucks of all types traveling that road, regardless of this project. So to me, the stopping analysis, not the view analysis from the truck entering and exiting, but the stopping distance should include truck stopping as well. In the tie and bond January 3rd letter, they talk about a removal of a tree down the road a little bit in the town right away. Has the tree town committee been notified and involved? Has conservation been involved? Have the abutters been notified yet? And what is the cost for the initial trimming and maintenance along that south side of River Neck and the town right of way? That should be on the applicant, not the town. The conditions that are in there seem too vague and don't address that. Now, that Apollo address for deliveries is great the first time, but once a truck driver sees where the building actually is, they're going to use the River Neck address. And that also doesn't address trucks exiting. Now, trucks exiting the property still need to turn one way or the other, depending on where their GPS is taking them. There's a sign that says no turn, but the monitoring devices are on the access road. You need monitoring devices on all sides of that intersection so that trucks don't avoid the monitoring. Because if you have a limit on the trucks going through that intersection straight away, then that creates incentive to turn.
It's a good point on the monitoring. I've got that.
Also, monitoring, they recommend every 6 months, or sorry, every 12 months. That plus the 2-month time that they propose to get the data to the town means that 14 months would be elapsed before the town even sees any traffic data. So monitoring should be done a lot more frequently and with a shorter turnaround for data to the town. The 10% threshold that they propose in the condition, they state only during peak hours. So again, that drives traffic outside of the peak hours. They should use the 24-hour day so that actual impacts can be addressed. It should also be noted anywhere in here that mitigation should be at the proponent's expense and not the town. Traffic condition mitigation number 4, that 100,000 is way too low. There's nothing that can be done for 100,000. And my biggest concern is proposed traffic condition number 11. That's my biggest concern with this whole thing. The applicant defines trucks as tractor trailers, class 8 or above, based on the Federal Highway Administration. Mass DOT, for their left lane truck exclusion on highways, defines it as heavy commercial vehicles at or greater than 2.5 tons used for transport of goods, wares, and merchandise. So the federal highway standards were designed to meet a lot of traffic data needs, pavement, designers, safety, and that's what we're dealing with here. So there are also some pretty big flatbeds and box trucks that would damage our roads on River Neck, and they seem to be allowed to turn either direction based on these proposals. So I would propose that the new definition of truck throughout this entire project be heavy commercial vehicles from the Federal Highway Administration Class 5 or greater that are used in the transport of goods, wares, and merchandise.
In other words, a DOT definition.
Combine the two, combine the two, federal highway and the DOT. Because otherwise, we're still going to get heavy trucking on our roads. Also, the 40 limit. In the August 30th, 2022 traffic report, they estimated 150 truck trips a day. Then they decreased that because they decreased the loading docks with a corresponding decrease in truck traffic by 52% to 72 trucks per day. So 72 trucks per day means 36 round-trip trucks. They've already increased already from 36 to 40. So that should stay at 36, which is what they proposed initially. Also, and I mentioned this before, in the wording, the count is between the site and the access road, and that gives incentive to turn left or right. So the wording should be all trucks entering and exiting that property. They also proposed the day 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. Well, does that coincide with the hours of operation? And if not, how does that make the trucks access the road or the site? It makes them go Riverneck Road because they can't access those gates on the off hours. They also use a rolling average of 21 days. It should not be a rolling average. It should be
Actual.
A flat rate per day. They themselves have used the traffic studies to say we will not do more than this number per day. Let's use that number. And again, that definition of trucks is my biggest concern throughout this entire project. Lastly, the proposed condition for the public amenity. They're proposing to put a playground, a bus stop, right at that dangerous intersection without a traffic light, where you also have a blind curve, trucks entering and exiting, not where I'd want to go and sit and watch an accident. So those are my biggest concerns. You have this sent to you for the record, and I will be speaking about all of the other concerns at the next meeting.
Thanks. Yeah, we expect it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Sean Campbell, 19 Walnut Street. So Chris made a lot of great points, so, you know, I'll try not to touch base on that, and I'll try and keep it short and sweet here. But, you know, so I attended the meeting that they had with the residents of Walnut Street about this fire access way. And, you know, we were really scared and, you know, really concerned about the whole access way, and I think we still are because, you know, this is our quiet street, and now we get some type of, you know, potentially truck way in our backyards. So it's very concerning. I think they really just directed the problem away from these residents, select residents at the beginning of Riverneck. Perhaps they directed it and then they put it in our backyard. So they didn't really, in my opinion, solve anything. They just kind of said, well, maybe you're not the problem, but now you guys are you know, some new, you know, losers to this proposal. So, yeah, hey, those other guys are happy now. But, you know, I guess we're kind of the new losers. And I told them, you know, and I tried to find some common ground, and I said, listen, you know, you said you you were looking at purchasing a 10-acre lot at, you know, off of 300 Apollo, and you want this kind of truck crossing, which is, you know, sounding more and more like a railroad crossing, right at the blind corner. And it's just, forget about the backyards and the children playing and the interruptions and the shaking of the houses. I drive that corner, and I know you can't see anything when you're turning it. It's just, you're facing this way, and then you turn. And there's going to be now a truck. And that is, you know, it's my son that catches the bus at that bus stop. And, you know, all I think about when I hear these flashing lights is I think of the school bus that has that flashing light. And there's been times where I have to grab him and pull him out of the road because a car doesn't even see a school bus, which is huge, with flashing lights when it's going around the bend, especially in the morning. Now, I'm not trying to say, oh, you just can't do it. I just merely suggested you need to move it over as much as possible because there's a straightway on River Neck Road. And if you could just, you know, I don't like the truck crossing, but if you had to do it, you wouldn't want to do it right at that blind corner. So I do believe that their 10 acres is part of that, you know, straightaway. Perhaps they don't own, and I did ask, I said, hey, you got any legal documents that would show me, you know, this mapping? And they said, once it's all finalized, you'll be able to look it up online. I mean, that was their answer to me. But I don't believe they own the back half of 300 Apollo. But I do believe if you're looking at the map, and I have a little map here, that they have, they own this part right here, and they could slide that road over. And my suggestion would be that they should slide that truck crossing as far over as they can away from that corner, and it would also be helping us on the residential side, because we wouldn't be having the trucks so close to us. So that was my major concern. I did hear the Davis Company get up here and say something of the tonight about the fact that they don't own, they had some type of agreement to use part of the fire lane, but I do believe that they own, I do believe they're looking to purchase that straightaway on River Neck, and I also heard that they are also looking to build another building there in the future. So perhaps that's why they don't want to use the straightaway. They're thinking, well, hey, we could just use the existing fire lane, and we own this land now, and once we're done with this project, we're going to go build this other building. And even I created this for them. I emailed it to them. I hand delivered it to them. So I know they know what I'm talking about. And I even said, listen, do you want to build some other building? You could still do that, you know, on the other side there. So my suggestion is for the planning board to push that road over as much as possible. And then the other topic I'd like to touch base on is the promise of this fire lane. So, you know, I bought my home off my parents who moved in 1978, and that promise was to us. They fought, they went to the town. My dad was a firefighter. He's a retired Chelmsford firefighter. He had the remote. I mean, and that was the deal. Because before that, it was a farm, a nice quiet farm, and they were concerned about some big office park. And it's sad when you think about it, because today everybody's forgotten about that deal that they made to me and my family. And then you hear about these new deals that you're saying, oh, 80 trucks, and then there's a 10%, you know, threshold. So it's really 100 trucks that can go back and forth, and that's today. In 20 years, everybody's going to forget. And this is going to be the next UPS mega center. And, you know, what do? Oh, well, that was the time then, Sean. You know, so, I mean, I guess promises are nice, but it sounds like they've already broken the promises to us. So, and the Smarts, I heard somebody mention the Smarts, and they were here too, you know, at that time, and I'm sure there's others that may even get up to say they were present. I know that we put boulders. We had boulders in place so cars couldn't cut through. And this wasn't to prevent tractor trailers. This was just to prevent passenger cars. I mean, I couldn't even imagine if you went back in 1989, 84, and you said, well, we want tractor trailers to cross there. I mean, they would have blown a gasket. They didn't even want like a passenger car from an employee on his way home going across. So, I mean, I think they could buy the fire lane, but, I mean, who gave them the authority that they can just turn it into a road? We wouldn't even allow Apollo to do that. That was our agreement, so.
Well, we'll be looking to some degree at that.
Right, so,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I
been
know,
mentioned.
but if they could move it over, I think that would do a lot. So, I mean, rather than, you know, I got a lot of issues, but that would be my main thing. So, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Let's talk some history. How's that sound? I love history, and I want to share it over with the board and the residents who live here. I apologize, some pages didn't copy very well. Thank you. But I will email this to you. I do want this on the record. My name is Armin Jack-Navorian. I live at 5 Bailey Terrace. I spent a lot of time downstairs in the office looking around. I have a lot to say from last meeting, but I will try to do my best to hold back. 1984, November, there was a pig farm back there, 66 acres.
Yep.
Tambone came in and did a lot of building, 270 Billerica, UPS, and Apollo Drive all at the same time. It was called Adrian Drive. And if you look on page 3 of the 84 planning board minutes, planning board, says right then and there, no connection to River Neck Road. Okay? It's right here in the minutes. You go to the next page, which is planning board 1128. It's a handwritten.
Yep.
Second page, hard to read, starred, gated. Pretty clear to me. Okay? Continue on to your fourth page, Chelmsford Office and Research Park Economic Impact Study. Second page, proposal, bottom, big section here, right? The new public interest, 5 buildings, access to the lots, emergency access on River Neck Road for the fire department. In the study. Next page, fire protection. His prime concern of the fire chief is access to the sites from River Neck Road for emergency use only. It's right here in the economic study. I'll go on. Look, a nice little map. Emergency access only. Now we go to the blueprint. It's hard to read, but it does say cantilever gate controlled by solid state radio approved by the Chelmsford Fire Department with manual control. Here you go. There's the bigger version of it.
Yep.
I think it's pretty clear that the intention of this access road was for emergency use. Let's go on to the next meeting here. Where am I at? Conservation Commission. They even talked about it, how the Board of Selectmen had concerns about this access road. It was for emergency use only. Another drawing showing it, emergency access only. February 25th, 1985, public hearing. The smarts were mentioned in here. Other residents about the access road, emergency access only. We'll continue on to the good stuff. So, yes, I found the special permits. They're online, deed website, downstairs. And yes, 40 years ago, they did not write down the specifications of the permits. It's a shame they didn't do that. A lot of things weren't written down. A lot of things were missing. That's how it was explained to me. That's how we did things back then. Fair to say, right? Well, here's a letter from Van Hess, Town of Chelmsford Planning Board, March 7th, 1985, asking for a waiver of the traffic circle. Now, Apollo Drive had to have a traffic circle.
Right.
Had to be a certain size. They asked for a waiver to reduce the size of that circle. If you go to page 2, part of the agreement from the fire chief here says, where is it? The chief approved the traffic circle to be reduced because there's an emergency access road. It's not in the permit, but they're asking for a waiver of a circle for their roads. It's a fair trade. Next, you go to the Board of Selectmen meeting, 6/22/87, okay? There's a traffic study. Little side note. Guess how many trucks were on Golden Cove Road back in 1987 in 7th Street? They thought 32. They put a camera up, 122 instead. Bottom of the page. But if you flip the page, top page, Mr. Hurley's talking about the gate on 300 Apollo Drive not being closed and to write a letter to Apollo to shut it. Another indication from the Board of Selectmen, it's an emergency access road. And then, February 6, 1989, as Eric mentioned, a letter from the planning board telling the property owners to put up boulders because cars are crossing the parking lot onto River Neck Road. This is from you guys or your predecessors. And after it are 2 pages with the rebuttals from Tambone and Quorum saying we're going to fix the problem, and we fixed the problem. So yes, there's no covenant, there's no written agreement, but it's pretty clear that this town and this planning board at one time made an agreement with the residents to keep it safe. What they proposed is disastrous. Ever watch a semi-truck hit a car? I have. It's not pretty. Ever watch a semi-truck hit a semi-truck? Even more disastrous. Have you guys watched my video I put on YouTube? You see the 18-wheeler headed down River Neck towards Clark, slam its brakes at the corner, and you can hear the brakes go ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. What was he missing? We don't know because the camera was pointed the wrong way. But let's go on. I'll make it real quick. What these guys are telling you is smoke and mirrors, okay? As Eric mentioned at the community meeting, we have some land with frontage for an access road. They talked for a half hour before Eric asked that question. What are you going to put there? Nothing. Well, we may develop it later. They're not telling us the truth. They're giving us just enough information, okay, to get our mouths wet and feel good about things. Chris mentioned the trucks. Anybody in this room know what a Class 8 truck looks like? How about a Class 7 truck? Or a Class 5 truck? They said in this proposal, number 11, Class 8 trucks only. But an hour ago he said all trucks. A Class 8 truck is a tractor trailer, 53-foot, full-blown trailer, right? A Class 7 is also could consider to be a pup truck. 25-foot trailer like UPS has, or the Coke truck, or the Sigma truck. According to what they wrote in their proposal, Class 8 trucks are the only trucks that have to use that access road. How about your box trucks, your tri-axle Budweiser trucks, right? Or your short pup trucks. So what they're saying is, we're going to tell our tenants, hey, your 18-wheelers have to use the Apollo address, but tell your smaller drivers to come down River Neck Road. Tell your box trucks to use River Neck Road. So now your 40 trucks a day are 18-wheelers, but the other 150 trucks a day are going to be box trucks or pup trucks coming down River Neck Road. It's pretty deceiving. I mean, I could go on, but I'll say the rest for the next meeting. Okay. But read it with a fine-tooth comb. They're putting in things just enough to get you thinking, but they're really lying to us because they want this building more than anything else. They don't care what we want. Thank you.
Joel Luna, 10 Carter Drive. Last time that we had a public meeting at which we weren't able to speak, then applicant asked for a 90-day extension, which gave us some time on our hands, so I think we made good use of that. But tonight, I was really, I'm not going to go into detail in this letter. I was going to, but I'm not going to because I know that you want to focus on the.
Yeah, we will get to these topics.
So, yeah. But the main thing I wanted to point out was in the September 14th meeting. Actually, Mike Raisbeck referred to the fact that he'd worked at Mercury,
yeah, I did.
and that in fact you could never use that, and it was because of property owners. Yeah. Essentially. And so I think that clearly, as Armin gave an excellent history, you know, this lane has always not been allowed for use because of the impact that it would have on neighbors, and that was just assuming normal traffic. And I think that the previous speaker, which I don't remember his name, said, and I think he said it exactly right, you're really not eliminating adverse effects from the truck traffic. What you're doing is you're shifting who's going to be experiencing those adverse effects. And the bylaw specifically, the special permit specifically is to balance the adverse, to basically the benefits have to outweigh the adverse effects. And so that's the question you have to ask in your mind with this truck lane. The other thing too I want to say is that when you sit back and you think about it, you're watching these things, everything that we're talking about today, how we're going to do things, all these conditions and things that are going to be met, are like these kinds of agreements that were made in past that now today, You know, we're not even giving any consideration to it. Actually, I'm surprised is how much we're not even thinking about the fact that this was a promise made we need to keep. So all these other promises we're talking about, well, what's our expectation? Those will be kept. But there's a couple of things that I really want to, I think, am bothered by that came up tonight. And that is that, first of all, it's the question of conditions. I don't think there's a question about whether you can put conditions on this agreement. The question is, how are those going to be enforced, and what is it going to require of us, the town, and what is it going to require of us, the neighbors? As far as you've seen the level of effort that has gone into this hearing process over this year. And once this, if this is approved as proposed, that is going to have to, this neighborhood, which by the way amounts to 8 or 9 streets or more, because we're not just talking about River Neck Road, McFarland, Monmouth, Forest, we're also talking about Golden Cove, Carter, et cetera, because the traffic, we're talking about truck traffic, but we're also, as Anita Tanini pointed out, because they're not using the maximum like they did at 270, their maximum potential use that could happen is going to generate 1,600 trips total, which is going to mean there's going to be an immense amount of car traffic through Golden Cove. So again, there's always, I've always said there are two traffic problems. First one is the truck traffic. Second one is the car traffic, primarily in the Golden Cove area. Okay, so that's my first issue is to carefully consider what is it going to cost the town and what is it going to cost us for these conditions, to make these conditions work. The second one is this idea of not commenting because it's a concept. And I sat on the planning board, and when I wanted to know how stormwater was going to work, and I said, what is the seasonal high groundwater there? What is the separation of infiltration beds? And I was, have you done test pits in those areas? And they always said, it's a concept. We only have to present a concept to you because it's a comprehensive permit. And I said, I understand that's what the law says, but I need to know that it's going to work. And so we have enough information for us to be able to comment on whether we think it's going to work or not. I do not want to have this board saying that we can comment on it when the final plans are in, because when the final plans are in, you're going to close the hearing. So I want to be able to comment on those things now. Not tonight, but next time. The other thing I wanted to say too is that this traffic issue is like throwing a bone to a dog. You know, you jump on the bone and you don't pay any attention. We're all focusing on this road and how it's trying to solve a particular problem, and we're not paying any attention to what is generating the problem, which is the size of the building. And Mike Walsh, in September 14th, I thought rather well and heatedly said that what's the point of going forward if in fact we are not going to, if we don't see a point of going forward, why would we keep going and looking at all these details? And I still think that's a valid question. So I don't want to, I'm not saying to do that tonight. I'm just saying that those are the kinds of issues that we do want to not keep postponing, because it is a fundamental, I think, a fundamental issue that the proponent, we keep looking at how can this project work? And we aren't looking at why are we letting it be so large to make these issues. You can focus on all the conditions in order to fit it in, or you can also look at how can I just reduce the size so I don't have these issues. And that's the thing I think that we need to look at. So this letter goes through that, and this letter also goes through a very careful building up of how you should look at this question, because I think that there is a fear on the part of this board of being sued by being appealed, and I don't think that should be a factor in your decision. That is not a criteria of the bylaw. I gave it already. Thank you. And so I think that that's something that I ask you to read the letter and give it very careful consideration. What is the basis for your decision? Because it's that basis that you can be appealed on by either party. So that's the extent of the comments I have for tonight.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, we've got, okay, I'd like to maybe run this to 9:30, but that gives you plenty of time.
I'm going to make this brief, as a matter of fact, just to the comments that were
Sorry?
made.
How many do we have on there?
Marlene Cote has had her hand up. Since
Okay,
the
we'll get
beginning.
her on there as well.
Okay, Chris
And,
Bowman, Precinct 10
Get
Rep,
out of here till 10.
3 Julio Street. So I just have some quick comments on statements that were made tonight, and some questions. Now, presumably, there was this big study done on Apollo Drive and trucks coming in and out. There was no comment on the size of that turn. There was no comment on the residents who live right there. In fact, there is a private home directly opposite Apollo Drive. That property is continually damaged by Cintas trucks, which are a whole lot smaller than 53-foot tractor trailers. That was not considered. What was not considered was use of jake brake, which I'm sure these truckers will use. Another consideration is that Apollo Drive was never intended for this kind of traffic, this kind of truck, high concentration of semi-trailer truck traffic. So it's being misused. Okay, also going from 52 to 25 loading docks, that's great. However, then why, like Joe said, why is the building so big? The proposed or presumed necessity for this big of a structure is now taken away. And besides all the other things which we'll hold to next time. But another thing is that a comment was made that this project is a substantial economic benefit to the community. It is not. It is not going to generate any commercial tax revenue for the town that is above what already the town gets for an empty building. It's going to be half of what the town is already getting. Jobs, the jobs are going to be minimum wage jobs primarily, which lend themselves to robotics. So there are no jobs. The CEIOD and BAOD were put in expressly to have high-quality business, commercial activity in areas in town. Warehousing is not high quality. It's low quality, and it's on the bottom of the barrel. So this does not serve the town at all. It is a high risk and negative benefit to the town, and just plainly is not a good fit for what was intended and the purpose for this given area. And by the way, everybody before me did a great job. Yeah, they did. And I hope you listen, because they expressed everything that everybody here and all the residents, even those who are not here, want the answers to specifically, and are counting on you to do the right thing on their behalf. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we have, we're going to go to Zoom.
Okay, Marlene?
Hi. Thank you. I raised my hand a long time ago, actually, just to say that the audio is so bad, I'm missing a lot of what's being said. It sounds like you guys are underwater or something.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's really awful. But so I may be repeating something, but I don't think I am. I think I heard one of the board members ask Paul Haverty about the exit of Apollo Drive onto 129, and I don't think his question was answered. But anyway, I have the same question. You know, has that been looked at? And And I worked at 300 Apollo Drive for 3 years, not that long ago. And I have to tell you, I mean, traffic was always backed up between, I'd say, like 3:30 and 6. You don't just get out of that street, especially if you're taking a left-hand turn. So, you know, I don't see how tractor-trailer trucks adding to that would be helpful. So anyway, whatever the answer is, you guys can talk to him or whatever, but I think that end of the road needs to be looked at. And it wasn't clear to me whether there was a gate on that end of the road or not. And if there isn't, then you've got tractor-trailer trucks going down the road when the other end might be closed. So where are they going to turn around? Anyway, that's just a...
I believe it has 2 gates, what the proposal does.
Okay, I couldn't see. Okay, thank you. And, you know, I mean, you know, I don't want to take up any more time, but I would reiterate what everybody has said. I really feel badly for the people on Monmouth if they would have to put up with this 2-lane trucks behind their homes. I just think it's a terrible travesty. And as someone who lives in East Chelmsford, I have 2 routes that I can go, really, that make any sense, to go to the center of town. One is 129 and one is River Neck Road. And honestly, I can't even imagine having a truck cross in front of me on River Neck Road around the curve going toward Monmouth from the center. I just think there's going to be horrific accidents. So I'll end there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll take one more, and you're up.
All right. Judy DeAngelis, 217 River Neck Road. I've lived at 216 and 217 for 65 years. What I'm saying to you is everything that we do here, this is an onion project. You peel it back, it gets stinky, and you cry. So what's happening is consequences that happen. The road study, when you're saying put up flashing lights, that's going to go for 6 houses that are right at the road. So now, in my bedroom, I'm going to have flashing lights warning of tractor-trailer trucks going in. You got to be careful. Like, what you're doing has another consequence to our lives. I don't know how many planning boards I've lived through the entire time I've been here, but I've lived through McKennedy's Pig Farm, Zabert's Farm, and I bought Baldwin's Farm. So as you think about this, there was never supposed to be a house behind our house. There was supposed to be 1 building over at Zabert's Farm that turned into 2. It filled a swamp that I used to pick blueberries at to build building number 2. Yes, that was supposed to be a fire road that was never supposed to exit onto River Neck. Yes, we put those boulders there. So I don't know what you have to do when you do these projects to get it in writing, in legal, so it never changes, because I've lived through, I can't tell you how many promises for the building and the constructions on River Neck Road in that 1 square. It matters. And every time we think of something else, you're not going to live there with a flashing light saying, beware of the truck that's coming around the corner. And you don't live there when I see those trucks and the buses slamming on the brakes for that bus. Every single morning, they are screaming and slamming on the bus. The bus driver is beeping the horn, it's flashing. They're not going to be able to stop. And do I want a stop sign there? Or a flat, like a full lit lights? I know that's not going to work, but flashing lights, you're not going to want that outside your bedroom. I don't want it outside mine. And if you look there, there are 6 right on the street houses that are between that 200 and 350 distance that you'd have to put up that warning to come. And it's going to hit all our windows, in our living rooms, in our bedrooms, flashing about the new truck warning. So just putting it out there. Whatever you end up doing, we got to get it in writing, and it's got to be legit.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one more on Zoom.
Look, I would like to close this up and continue.
Why?
Well, I mean, how late do people want to stay? No, we're not staying to midnight. It ain't going to happen.
There's 2 more. Let them speak. We've got 1 person here.
Oh, all right.
You shut them down last time. They all came for it.
They did, but I want to keep some control here, and we're going to have more of these. I can guarantee you. How many did you say you had on?
One on Zoom, Sung Kim.
Okay, why don't you put him on? We still have a little time left before that.
Hi, this is Sung Kim from 36 Botman Street. If you see first of all, I want to thank you guys for giving me this opportunity to talk and hear our feedback. If you look at the access road map, I'm actually, my house is actually on the left, bottom right-hand corner where George Patricia Rowe used to live. So this is a bit of an old map, but that's where I live. And so this directly affects me very much. And I agree with a lot of the people's point of view today, particularly what the rest of the residents had to say. I just have a few points I wanted to add, very similar to what the concerns were. But I wanted to elaborate a little bit more about, deeply about my concern. One is the access road hours, the 12 to 5. If that hour is meant to provide some kind of peace and quiet, I don't think it's a genuine attempt to do so, because most people don't sleep for 5 hours. So if this has any chance of passing, I would like to push for longer closure, preferably at least 8 hours, but preferably even longer. Particularly because we live in a resident family. When I came in, my son was only 1 year old, and obviously a 1 year old baby does not sleep just even 8 hours. They sleep even longer. And I know that it might be unreasonable to ask them to close for 18 hours, but at the very least, my son now, who is 7, he sleeps about 10 hours. So I would like to push that as a planning board, if you could attempt to expand that a bit. Second thing is, like I said, the map is a little old, and I'm not sure exactly why they use such an old map. A lot of the residents on Monmouth Street, a lot of them on the bottom, I'm not sure if you can see it, but I can kind of see it because I can kind of zoom in and out. But a lot of the residents on the map no longer live on Monmouth Street. In fact, there's only 2 residents on that map who currently lives on Monmouth Street. And I'm just bringing that out because if you look right above the property line of Monmouth Street, there's an indication that it's a heavy wooded area. But to be honest, I guess it depends on your definition of what the heavy wooded area is. Some part of this area is more like a row of trees. In fact, last year when my son playing with the neighborhood kids, they easily walked through the heavy wooded area and jumped over a fence. It's not a forest, so I'm not sure if this map was used as an attempt to somewhat cushion the blow, making people believe that having a wooded area would soften the noise or make it more palatable for the residents on Monmouth Street. But I think I wanted to point it out that if you were to visit, it's not as heavy as you might imagine in parts of this map.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Did someone say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. And then someone also mentioned about pushing the access road up. Please push for that if this were to pass. Very concerned about, I think Sean Campbell is the one who pointed out how they bought a piece of land, and I can very much see them building a new building in the current parking lot and connecting it to the two-lane access road, and make it even more busier than what we plan, than what's being proposed right now. So especially, like Kemba said, it doesn't quite make sense as to why they would buy that land without plans to build another building, considering that they are developers.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Oh, boy, it's getting on here. How many people actually have something new to say? Give me a show. All right, we've got 2. I think that's reasonable. Go ahead.
All right, hi, Eric Finney, 8 Clark Avenue. I had sent you all an email the other day. I'm not going to get into that. Thank you for your replies. I just wanted to mention just a few things. One, I skimmed through the latest traffic study that was posted under the new documents, and there were a couple things that kind of jumped out at me, and like one thing that kind of came to mind. The traffic studies are from 2021 and 2022, and then there's mention about that this proposed, or the expected traffic of the proposed project is actually less than what was there before. I don't see how that really applies, because when you look at the numbers of the traffic study, that was all done after Mercury has vacated the property. So it kind of like it popped in my head, and I think we need to totally ignore that at all. Completely. That has nothing to do with it anymore. It's been probably 5 years. I did have concerns about where the non-tractor trailers, how we're going to restrict that. But the biggest thing on the traffic study that I took away, there's something called a level of service, and there was a rating on the various intersections, and I don't know if you've all had an opportunity to look at it, but I didn't pick up on it on the first study, and I don't know if it was in there. But a lot of the intersections from 110 Stedman to Golden Cove to Turnpike, 129, and even Route 3 are on there. And I think all of them had a rating of E, which is the next to lowest rating.
Yeah. Awful.
And that, just to summarize, that means it's 30 to 40% speed, and any increase in traffic is going to cause significant delay. And then there was a section about proposed changes, and I didn't quite or a forecast for 2029. I don't know if that considered either improvements, I think, that were brought up in a prior public hearing, out on 495 to the 110 on and off ramp or not. But so I don't know if it takes into consideration any traffic improvements or not. But the projection was that these intersections are going to change from an E to an F. So I don't know if the town's already aware of that and there's plans underway, but regardless of the volume of traffic, we're going to see a decline, and having tractor trailers or additional trucks is only going to make it worse. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And lastly, during the last public hearing, the one that we didn't have any public comment, the gentleman from Davis mentioned that they were willing to limit their hours of operations from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. And now it looks like it's already inched up to midnight. I mean, I asked either at the second or third public hearing, what can be done on the permit to limit some of these, creeping of, their hours of operation, a restricted. So I can, again, I ask that you, push for some restrictions to help the residents.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, we've heard that from several people.
Right, thank you.
Right, thank you. All right, one more, and then I think we can call it a night. Go ahead.
Katie Melville. I live at 6 Monmouth Street. This is my backyard. I'll keep the testimony short because I told they're not as useful as facts, which I also have. But this truck road is 70 feet from the edge of my house. I mean, there are a lot of things with you won't allow a commercial building to be 100 feet from my house. But a commercial truck access road is allowed to be 70 feet next to a dead-end street that used to have no trucks going on my street. I mean, if I could think, it was hard to think of a way this project could get worse, but like, this road is it. You're just redirecting the traffic to people who literally have like no traffic. To get back to facts and reasons that the board should deny these special permits, the applicant is requesting under the BAOD and the CEIOD articles from the bylaws. From the BAOD, it talks about what the goals and objectives are. The first one is to address changing town and regional market conditions, specifically the desire by employers and employees within the IA zoning district to have local access to goods and services and housing. The local businesses, employers and employees are not going to be using this warehouse for services and goods and restaurants, that kind of stuff. Doesn't serve that purpose. The next is to provide access to business amenities that are limited in scope and scale for purposes of preserving Route 129's underlying and surrounding IA zoning district, which functions as an office and research and development park. This warehouse does not preserve 129's function as an office and research development park. Next is to promote orderly, effective, and quality development and redevelopment. We've already talked about how it's low quality, so I'll skip my sentences there. Another is to provide housing opportunities. It's not housing, so it doesn't qualify for that. Preserve and enhance the aesthetic qualities and characteristics of Route 129, such as architecture, streetscape character, open space, and overall business office park setting in a manner that protects and enhances the value of real property. I don't understand how this project's enhancing the aesthetic qualities and characteristics of 129. I don't know how it's contributing to a business office park setting. I don't know how it's enhancing the value of the property. As said at many meetings before, warehouses are low value per square foot compared to many other uses, and it's also going to devalue my property. Last purpose of the BAOD, not to disturb residential neighborhoods or detract from the appearance of the town, and will result in the maintenance of a balanced and workable relationship between the existing office business park, new businesses, and adjacent residential neighborhoods. Not to disturb residential neighborhoods. Like, I mean, my 10-year-old would roll her eyes. That's exactly what this road is doing. I mean, in fact, this project disturbs my neighborhood so much, I've had a few neighbors say they were going to move if this road goes up. So if that's not telling you, it's disturbing our neighborhoods. And these are things from the bylaws I'm just reading, things that projects in this area are supposed to do. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the CEIOD. From this, it says they're supposed to encourage site design that reduces curb cut-throughs, which is exactly what they're building. They're building a cut-through for the heaviest kind of traffic. It's also supposed to encourage high-quality development to protect and enhance the value of real property, provide high-quality architecture that reflects an appropriate community character, and site planning in a manner compatible and in context with surrounding neighborhoods or business districts. It's not compatible with the surrounding districts. This is a huge, way too big for the area it's in. This is a mixed-use area. It's a huge, huge, huge building. It should not be here. It doesn't fit in with the character. And last, that one is actually not relevant. Maybe they're doing that. I'm not actually sure. Okay. Yeah, and I also wanted to add from before with the nice little maps that they showed up earlier. I think this was said, but I wasn't sure if it was said straight up, so I just want to say that from two directions, it still goes on Golden Cove Road, which is another big part of this, and you're really only preventing that one little section of River Neck Road, and again, you're only preventing the hugest trucks going on there. You're still gonna get all the other trucks. I think, just one more thing, because this has to do with special permits. The planning board provides for granting a special permit only after consideration of the following, and neighborhood character is one of the things that they're allowed to use to deny special permits. So please deny it, all of them, and I will have a lot more to say about things not access road related next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk to you next. Okay. Now, let's see. I would suggest we have a motion to continue.
the public hearing.
And that's going to be, yep.
I've got
Yeah,
some
go ahead.
requests for our next meeting with them that I'd like to see. Because we're going to continue this.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
I'd like to see, because we see all the, like, we see the building from this size,
Yeah.
which is, can be a little deceiving. I like to see a scale of how this building looks compared to a house in the neighborhood. So I like a side view, please.
It's Photoshop for River Neck Road, crossing the bridge, look at that building.
Yep.
Yeah.
When I'm on River Neck Road looking west on the highway, that building's gonna pop up like a cell phone tower. Guaranteed. Let's see how.
But, yeah, I mean, even if you just look, you grab the houses on Clark and put a house so we can see the scale of it. I'd like to see the scale of it. And then, are we going through the general conditions here? Because I've got a bunch of issues on here.
Let's see. I think a lot of that's going to depend on what we get next meeting. If I understand, we'll be seeing some more detailed plans. I think that might be, I mean, obviously, some of these conditions pertain to the road and not to the building.
Well, I have an issue with the fact that number 12 on the site, third last page, they're saying they're going down to 25 docking doors. However, if they need to go back up to 52, all they have to do is ask Evan for a waiver, because it'll
But we're not
automatically.
going to approve that.
Okay, I want to make sure that they understand that, so they might as well start rewriting that.
Yeah.
And then I have an issue with the use restriction. We now have, we have a definition, our town meeting approved a definition of distribution. If they're serious about putting in this use restriction, the definition should not be for last mile, it should be what we have in our bylaw. Also, the tenant definition needs to be all contractor, subcontractor, suppliers, vendor, the person who is currently occupying the space, or who may or may not be have a direct lease with the landlord. That's how that should be defined, of who
Yeah,
it
that can
encompasses.
be,
And I
tightened
like
up.
our definition of what we have in the bylaw.
We're good. Okay, yeah, that's, when we start drafting that stuff seriously, we'll take all of that into account.
Can we
need to.
make a motion to continue because this
Yeah.
public hearing? Because we still have to do those
Yes.
zoning things. They have to be done today.
Yeah.
So that the 2-week
Right.
is in 2
Oh,
weeks.
that, yeah, the regulation changes, you mean?
The zoning changes that we have to go over.
I think we continued that
those.
already.
We did.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the regulation revisions, but we
Right.
covered the zoning changes,
Okay, so
Right.
all we had to do is open it and then close it. Okay, I just want to make sure.
continued it.
Okay,
Yeah.
continue, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Okay, good.
As far
All
as,
right.
as far as
That's a lot,
dates, I
yeah.
would not suggest February 8th. That meeting is jam-packed at this point.
And what's the next
47
one?
Chelmsford Street, the zoning public hearing continued with the invite to the ZBA. Continued 264 Groton, Kidder Road, 270 Billerica, and 250 Apollo.
Better start at 6:30.
We're doing that?
Won't give us, that gives us a little
Yeah,
more.
that
You might
hearing's been
need to start at
re-advertised.
6 o'clock and still not get done
Do you-
until
What you may
11.
want to consider for this is either, if February 22nd doesn't work, maybe a special meeting moving forward.
There's enough stuff on there, I think we do need a special meeting. And I'm gonna have to go figure out what my Wednesdays look like, but, all right.
Wednesday, the 15th is the Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I forget when those start, I think they're 7. But I think at this point, you're looking at dedicated meetings, if you're going, if you're going to continue the process.
Okay.
Why?
Well,
Because we have so many
because-
projects on the
Because I think
table.
it provides a benefit to the hearing, meaning the public knows that they can come, it's a dedicated meeting, that's all that's on the agenda.
Okay, but I don't think we should go out of our normal.
No, I'm just suggesting that if you continue it to the 22nd, you're going to have other items on the agenda.
Right.
In order to provide the best
Then we're looking
opportunity
at
for the
March
public
8th
hearing.
and March 22nd, right? Because
sorry?
every
We
2
have
weeks.
February.
That's why I'm suggesting a special meeting.
You're saying add a meeting for them,
Yep.
which
Or
would go to the next one that's available, which,
February 22nd is the next available.
But-
Dedicate that.
I
But we have
make a
moments to
motion
do.
to move to February 22nd then.
Do we have others on that day?
You likely will have whatever's continued from the 8th. There's nothing new. There's
But maybe
nothing-
we'll have to continue the things from the 8th to March.
Yeah, we
March.
can't
You can do
continue
that, sure.
forever.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can pencil in the
But that puts
February
pressure on us to
22nd.
get the
This is
things done on the 8th.
This is the only major agenda item,
Okay,
sure.
so this is the only thing for the 22nd.
So far.
22nd.
So far.
Okay,
Then why doesn't he block it out? That's the only.
that's what I'm saying, block it out, that's the only
Well,
thing.
that's up to us. We won't continue.
Yeah, I mean,
anything to the
I can do
22nd.
that, but you may have applicants on the 8th who get continued for a very minor purpose, and you may want to accommodate them.
Yeah, that's
Or
true.
we move them to the 8th of March, but I won't be
Yeah.
here, which may be better for them. But,
Well, let's get as much in as we can. Let us.
What time do you want to start? Regular time?
I think we need to get a little early, let's stuff in as much as we can. And they were talking the 28th,
22nd.
22nd,
February
that's a one-topic meeting,
Hopefully.
hopefully. And I want to that way, we can start at 6:30 and we can have people talking until 9:30 and get 3 hours in.
Are we
It'll be
gonna-
exhausting, but
Are we expecting to have the zoning done by then, so we don't have to put that, or does that need to, how many meetings do we need to do that?
The zoning component, no later than March 8th.
so,
The regulation component, the Sustainability Committee would suggest as soon as possible.
Right.
so can we have Attorney Harity for both of those meetings? If we're gonna go through, well, we're on the 20th.
Okay, if we're
going
doing
through
that,
this
that
on
may
the
make some
22nd, that
sense,
we
you're
need him
right.
here, and then we have the zoning on the 8th, so I'd like to have him for both.
Okay,
I have put it in my calendar for both the 8th and
thank you, Paul.
welcome.
Thank you, Paul.
Very much appreciated.
Okay,
So we have a motion, is there a second to continue this item to the 22nd?
Second,
You, Paul McDougal, second by Deidre.
Deirdre.
Deirdre voted.
Yes.
We just need a,
Aye.
Like they need a vote.
Aye, are we supposed to
Aye.
vote?
Aye.
Sorry, yes, aye, we're voting.
okay.
Aye.
22nd?
22nd, can you do that? Is that doable? Thanks.
We'll make sure we're here. So thank you for
Okay.
your time and consideration.
And you'll
All right.
have the full application in for the road.
Yeah.
you got 2 minutes, two minute sets.
Minutes.
I haven't read them.
I'm sorry,
let me
one,
take a look
December
here.
14th.
Chairman, you don't need me for anything else, do you?
I think you're all set, Paul. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Paul.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night. Okay, where are the minutes?
They were emailed out, or they're attached to the agenda?
They're on the agenda.
They were on the agenda,
December 14th.
All those letters.
All
I'd
right.
like to postpone voting on the minutes.
Okay.
I
Okay.
forgot, I was trying to get through those.
Hey, can you get a copy of this to Paul?
Yes.
This might be kind of useful for him.
Yep.
Save us a bunch of research. God.
All right, we need a motion.
There was something on the agenda about scheduling a work session. Do we plan to do that?
No.
But can I just put something on the work session?
go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to, I know you guys want to get.
No, that's
You just-
fine.
You just reminded me. One of the things, when we approved the applicability, because I happened to notice, I heard this on the Conservation Committee meeting,
Yeah.
so we don't ask, and that allow, sorry, let me take a second. When we approve applicability, right, for a
Yeah.
COA overlay, right, that gives them less setbacks, right?
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, it gives them less setbacks. So one thing that came up with conservation is, that was problematic when they
Yeah.
were looking at this facility. Now, we don't, when they come in for applicability, we don't
No, we don't.
think about,
Yeah.
No.
is it, should we?
No.
No, and the
Is that the
applicability
site
is
plan
not
review?
looking at the specifics of the plan, it's looking at the general
I know.
concept and use.
I get
And
that,
that's all it
I
is.
know, but
it's-
now it's tied their hands, and they're kind of stuck with what we've decided, because we haven't
No, they
holistically.
can still say no.
Right, but I'm just saying that, like, that did come up in that meeting, and I'm wondering if there's a better, like, an
Well,
internal
y-
process before we can change that.
It's interesting you might, and we've kind of
Can
gone.
we do
yeah.
applicability that says, oh, but applicability, but you still have to have the setbacks from those wetlands, or something like that? Like, I don't know.
Well, you still have
Wouldn't
to.
recommend
Those
it.
are legally
Yeah.
binding.
Yeah.
I mean, they're bound by the law, so that supersedes our applicability.
It absolutely supersedes
applicability
those
is
And
Waste
we've,
and cute
you know,
compared to
we've
the
tried some of this
wetlands laws.
before, and I think your point is kind of a good one. There are all kinds of committees out there that have authority
Yeah.
to do different things. And at various times, we've tried to include reference to that authority in some of the stuff we've done, and I can't say it's gone particularly
Okay,
well.
just because they made a comment that, and that maybe I
Yeah.
misunderstood the comment, but they made the comment that now their hands were tied because we approved it. So if they have the ability, then I was.
It's not.
No.
Okay.
Their hands are not tied.
Do they?
It still has to meet conservation.
Their hands are tied.
Do they, like, but is their only alternative to say yes or no? Is that it? Or can they say, no, we want it further back?
Yeah, they can negotiate.
Yeah,
They
can negotiate.
they can
All
always
right.
And then it may have to
negotiate.
come back to us again.
Yeah, I
It
mean.
seemed like they couldn't. That was my,
Yeah,
I was
they
like,
can-
they
oh,
can
why
do
didn't
that.
They can
Why don't we do
negotiate.
something? Okay. That's
I mean,
fine.
they can disapprove something we've approved, and we can disapprove something they've approved.
Okay, I wasn't sure, like, they were, like, I didn't want them to, like, have to, like, say no to the whole plan, and then it goes up, like, it's all in
No,
smoke.
they just need to negotiate
Watch
it.
their meeting.
You're still in the meeting if you
Should
walk
watch
through
their meeting.
Oh, yeah, the Concom's different bunch, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta run the
Hey,
gauntlet.
Evan,
10.
Yeah.
Go like this.
the applicability, is that to Seoid or Bayard?
Both.
Both on
We
this
did it
one.
on
Why
both.
is it
On
to
this one,
Bayard?
yeah.
Because the Bayard process uses the COID process.
Yeah, but the point is, I'm not seeing anything at all in Bayard, any of the relief in Bayard that they need for this project,
Oh,
nor do I see
don't-
where they,
I don't believe they're using Bayard for this permitting
isn't
process.
Bayard.
They're using COID,
this
correct?
is Seoid.
Right.
So what
They
we
quoted
heard
both,
tonight
though.
in terms of this isn't applicable to Bayard, it isn't applicable to Bayard, but it's absolutely applicable
There's
to
some
the purpose of
confusion on the
Seoid.
applicabilities.
Yeah,
Where are we going?
Doctor, we haven't ended the meeting yet.
We did not, sorry, we
I
did
make
not
a
vote
motion.
to end.
I think you just made a motion
I make a motion.
towards the
Close the
door.
meeting.
I second it.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Can I get 3 members to sign?